Chapter 401, 7 Soul Poisons. They finished lunch at about 1:30 p.m. and had a rest for a while. At nearly 2 p.m., they planned to go out for a stroll. The most famous scenic spot here is Westlake. Since we don't have much time left in the afternoon, let's go there for a walk, and go to other places tomorrow or the day after tomorrow, said Wang Ming. Zhang Han and Xian didn't care where they went for sightseeing first because they would stay here in the coming days and had a lot of spare time to travel. But Westlake had little attraction for Zhang Han and Xian because they had both been there before. They have been living in New Moon Bay and are used to the scenery of the sea. How can Westlake attract them? Let's go to the Songtown scenic spot today, said Rong Jiaxin. Well, let's go. Wang Ming replied with a smile. Let's go. Meng cheered in Zhang Han's arms. On the way out, Rong Jiaxin saw that Meng had always been in Zhang Han's arms, so she whispered to Xian, Meng is almost 4 years old, and she should practice walking more. You can't hold her all the time. Let children of her age develop the habit of independence, which will make it a lot easier for you in the future. As elders, they knew more about parenting than Zhang Han and Xian, and the experience of the elderly was sometimes a treasure. Xian smiled and shook her head. They just like being together all the time. It doesn't matter. Xian understood the behavior of the father and daughter. After all, Zhang Han and Meng didn't know each other for a long time, and Xian and Zhang Han hadn't spent a long time together yet, and she also wanted to stay in his arms like Meng. Rong Jiaxin smiled and shook her head, deciding not to interfere in the happiness of Zhang Han's family. After all, Zhang Han was a grandmaster strong with his own principles, and he didn't need to worry about many trifles. They got in the car in turn. While Zhang Han and his friends still took the limousine, the others took the Land Rover. Han, as far as your strength is concerned, you don't need bodyguards. Are they hired by you? Asked Wang Ming curiously. I do business with my brother. Zhao Feng is my brother's disciple, and he is running a security company. The others used to be Zhao Feng's partners, and now they are members of the security company, answered Zhang Li. Oh, I see, they're so lucky. Wang Ming smiled. The Songtown scenic spot is not far from us, just a 30-minute drive to the west. I remember there was a shop where the dragon's beard candy and stinky tofu were delicious. I'll take you to taste them later. Rong Jiaxin smiled. They chatted all the way to the Songtown scenic spot. When they entered Songtown, they felt as if they were back in ancient times. On both sides of the street were buildings in the style of the Song dynasty, including tea houses, grocery stores, iron shops, wine shops, etc. On the street were puppet shows, shadow puppet shows, arena performances, and even armored soldiers patrolling or arresting fugitives, giving them a wonderful sense of having crossed time and space. The strange clothes of the staff in Songtown made Meng look around curiously. Finally, she asked, Papa, why are they wearing so many clothes? Because they are wearing ancient clothes, replied Zhang Han with a chuckle. When was the ancient time? A long time ago. Well, a long time ago, just like in those stories? Asked Meng curiously. When listening to a story, the opening line of many of them was a long time ago. There was yes, just old stories, but a lot of them are true. No matter what kind of questions Meng asked, as long as Zhang Han could answer them, he would. Each time it would remind him of counting ducks by the pond with his father. With Zhao Feng and his men clearing the way on both sides, they strolled among the crowded tourists during the National Day holiday. When they came to the snack street, Rong Jiaxin asked Wang Ming and Wang Ya to queue up for snacks. Wang Ming took the lead in buying some dragon's beard candy and brought them back for everyone to share. Dragon's beard candy is a traditional folk snack, named for its white color like cotton and slender size like the fabled dragon's beard. Like a small steamed bread with milk fragrance, the dragon's beard candy was milky white in color, with clear layers, soft, and with a sweet taste. and Meng Meng liked it so much. I want one more. Meng Meng mumbled after eating one. Then have another one. Zhang Han gave her a new one with a smile. Meng Meng soon finished eating again. I want the last one, she said, blinking. No. What happens when you eat too much sugar? Xian looked at Meng Meng and asked. My tooth will ache, answered Meng Meng. What did Mama say? Xian continued. Don't eat too much sugar. Meng Meng pouted and said, yes, but I want to have the last one. Not today. Can we have it next time? Asked Xian. Meng Meng stared with her big eyes, pouted, and said reluctantly, okay, good girl. Xian reached out to touch Meng Meng's face and then continued to talk with Rong Jiexin. Zhang Han watched silently for a while, and quietly put a small piece of dragon's beard candy that was specially left for Meng Meng in front of the little girl's mouth. Huh? Meng Meng was shocked. She looked up at Zhang Han with a surprised expression, and then ate the dragon's beard candy happily after taking a secret glance at Xian. Zhang Han laughed after watching it. In fact, Xian also noticed this scene. She had no choice but to secretly roll her eyes at Zhang Han. Shortly after they ate the dragon's beard candy, Wang Yali came back with a lot of stinky tofu, which Zhang Han, Zhao Feng, and the others shared. Therefore, all the guardians including Zhao Feng began to eat stinky tofu. This made passers-by on both sides somewhat surprised. These bodyguards are eating stinky tofu. In order to continue to clear the way, they ate fast and didn't even taste it. Zhang Han took a bowl of about 7 pieces of stinky tofu and first picked up one and handed it to Meng Meng. Huh? Meng Meng leaned over to smell it with her little nose, and then turned her head. Oh, so stinky. I don't want to eat it. Papa is so bad. How can you give Meng Meng such stinky food? Ha ha ha. Zhang Han burst into bubbling laughter. It is fried stinky tofu, he explained. It smells a little stinky but tastes delicious. Let Dad show you how to enjoy it. After that, Zhang Han put a piece of stinky tofu into his mouth and chewed it. In this way, Meng Meng watched Papa eat several pieces and felt a little curious. Well, then, I'll take a small piece, said Meng Meng. Take a bite. Zhang Han handed over a piece of tofu. Meng Meng took a small bite. Why doesn't it stink? Are you trying to trick Meng Meng? Meng Meng's innocent words aroused the laughter of the adults. Wang Ya looked at Meng Meng with admiration and a light sadness in her eyes. Wang Ya's smile made Rong Jiexin very happy, but also reminded her of those unpleasant things. Looking at her daughter, Rong Jiexin felt sad yet angry. After eating 2 other snacks, they continued to wander. On the long holiday, there were lots of tourists and rich recreational activities here. They watched the song and dance performance Madame White Snake, which sublimated their emotions, gave them the experience of the life of the ancients in Liangzhu, and let them admire the glory of the imperial palace in the Song dynasty. In addition to these, they also participated in exploration activities in Song Town, such as appreciating dynamic ancient paintings in the living along the river during the Qingming festival activity. As for the step-by-step haunted house and the strange stories haunted house, Zhang Han didn't go in because he was reluctant to let Meng Meng become afraid. It was getting dark. After having a good time in Song Town, they planned to return home. After getting in the car, Wang Ya looked at Meng Meng and said with a smile, "Shall we go to the Song Town amusement park tomorrow?" Amusement park? Meng Meng's face brightened up at the news. Yes, there are water parks, amusement parks, and lots of interesting places. Wang Ya replied with a smile. I want to go. Meng Meng would never refuse an amusement park. Let's go there tomorrow, Zhang Han said with a smile. Meng Meng was very happy, and even the atmosphere in the car was enlivened by the laughter of the delicate and lovely little princess. When they returned to the Wang family home, they went to the dining hall for dinner. At dinner, most of the Wangs were present. There were 3 elders in the Wang family: Wang Zanping, the father of Wang Gang; Wang Zanzong, the father of Wang Ming; and Wang Zhanhong, the father of Wang Liang. The three elders were all at the level of Grand Master, while the youngest was 70 years old, the oldest was 90 years old, and all of them were widowed. Wang Ming's three cousins were all only sons. Among them, Wang Gang had his own grandson, the fourth generation of the Wang family. There were about 20 people in the dining hall. In addition to the members of the Wang family, there were also some children and descendants of the branch families, making the quiet dining hall lively. While the oldest, Wang Zanping, was not here, the whole Wang family including Wang Zanzong and Wang Zhanhong warmly welcomed Zhang Han and his friends. During the meal, Zhang Han heard a conversation between the two elders. "Oh, the last day. As long as he can make it through, it's over. Hope the eldest brother can survive." They sighed with emotion and then went back to their old house after dinner. As soon as the two elders left, the young people in the dining hall began to feel relaxed and active. Several teenagers came to take photos with Xian when they saw that Zhang Han and his friends had finished their meal. They all knew that there was a superstar at home. After dinner, they went out for a walk by the river and then returned to their residence. Though the house arranged for Zhang Han and Xian had 3 rooms and 2 halls, they both tacitly chose the same room with a king-size bed. At about 9:30 p.m., Meng was tired. After coaxing her to sleep, Zhang Han and Xian returned to the living room, where Rong Jiaxin's family was still chatting with Zhang Li and Zif. "Meng is asleep?" asked Wang Ya with a smile. "Yes." Zhang Han nodded. "What a lovely baby, I envy you so much," said Wang Ya. "You will have a lovely baby in the future," said Xian with a smile. Wang Ya looked confused after hearing the words and then shook her head. When she was just about to say something, her phone rang. Taking out the mobile phone, Wang Ya couldn't keep smiling. She bit her lips and hesitated whether or not she should answer the phone. "I'll take the call," Wang Ya stood up and said. As soon as she stood up, Wang Ming's face darkened. "Don't answer the phone, let him go," he said in an angry tone. Wang Ming could roar in front of the crowd, which showed how angry he was. This surprised Zuf and the others. They didn't know what happened, but they could feel Wang Ming's anger. "That's enough." Rong Jiaxin pulled Wang Ming's arm and looked at Wang Ya. "Ya, answer the phone and make the final things clear, then don't get involved with him anymore." Wang Ya nodded in silence, turned around, and walked out. Wang Ming's face again darkened. "What's wrong with her, auntie?" asked Zhang Li. Rong Jiaxin's expression froze. She sighed and helplessly said, "She is going to get divorced." "Divorce?" Zhang Li was shocked and asked, "Why didn't I hear that Ya was married? Why is getting she divorced?" Wang Ming lowered his head, sighed heavily, covered his forehead with his left hand, and said with hatred and helplessness, "She married a brute, alas, Ya is unlucky." Rong Jiaxin sighed and said, "Ya got married 2 years ago. Her husband, Shi Danlai, is an illegitimate son of the head of the Shi family and has just been admitted by the Stone family 3 years ago. However, your uncle and I were doing closed-door cultivation then and hardly cared for Ya. After meeting Shi Danlai, we felt that he was very polite, and the Shi family was also a martial arts family much better than the Wang family, so we agreed to the marriage. After getting married, Ya often came back in her spare time, though in the beginning, she looked very good. Things got worse over time, and she has been in a bad mood and looked pale for the past 3 months. We are worried about her, so we ended the cultivation ahead of time, and she told us all about it. Shi Danlai is a liar. He has 2 lovers, and he still keeps relations with them after marriage. After Ya found out the truth, Shi Danlai no longer hid his whereabouts. He went to his lover's house every night and told Ya that it's normal to do so. Ya asked for a divorce, but Shi Danlai always disagrees because he wants to take advantage of the background of the Wang family to consolidate his foundation. Gradually, Shi Danlai went too far, and even suggested that Ya should serve him with his 2 lovers or serve his friends. When it came to this, Rong Jiaxin's eyes turned red, and she couldn't go on talking. After taking a deep breath, she continued, in the past month, Shi Tanlai started committing domestic violence on Ya. After we found out about it, we went to the Shi family to discuss it, but they kicked us out. Now they are talking about divorce. I hope it will be smooth. He's just a scumbag, such scum. Zhang Li said indignantly. What a beast. I look down on those bastards that do domestic violence the most. They all deserve to die, said Zuf angrily. Even Ziyan was shocked by the sorrow of marrying a scumbag. Zhang Han looked at Rong Jiaxin and Wang Ming with no expression and said, why don't you kill him since you hate him so much? As soon as he said that, the air seemed to be frozen. Ziyan, Zif, and Zhang Li all looked at Zhang Han. They realized that in the martial arts world, sometimes the role of law was very limited. How I wish I could pull out his tendons and peel off his skin. Wang Ming gritted his teeth and said, but I can't do it. Shi Kun, Shi Danlai's grandfather, has recently advanced to the Grand Master late stage, and he is an elder of the mystical fog sect. While the Shi family is more powerful than Wang family, the mystical fog sect is the strongest sect in Xihang, and we dare not challenge either of them. Shi Kun even announced that if we dared to hurt Shi Danlai, he would raise the Wang family to the ground. What's more, he said that Xiao was too argumentative to be his grandson's wife, and it was quite normal for a man to have several wives. I want to. But I can't, said Wang Ming helplessly. Now we just hope that Shi Danlai doesn't disgust us again, and that they can divorce smoothly. Rong Jiaxin sighed. Zhang Han shook his head slightly. This was not only because Wang Ya chose her husband with bad taste and bad luck, but also because of the influence of a powerful family. For this kind of thing, Zhang Han didn't put forward any opinions but just shook his head. Help them? He wouldn't, since the whole Wang family chose to keep silent on this matter. Why should he help them? Moreover, even if Zhang Han helped the Wang family, after he left Xihang, the Wang family would surely be retaliated on by the Shi family. If Zhang Han was at the level of innateness or above, he would destroy the Shi family and give vent to his aunt's anger, but he was no longer the Han Yang immortal who had defeated 10 super sects in the cultivation world, so he'd better not overreach himself. On the other side, Ziyan, Zif, and Zhang Li were comforting Rong Jiaxin and her husband. Well, let's not talk about these unhappy things. We didn't dare to tell Ya's grandfather about it, and we've kept it to ourselves for days. Now we feel much better. Rong Jiaxin shook her head and continued, I believe that Ya will marry another good man. I hope so, Wang Ming said, hearing his cell phone ring. After receiving the call, his face changed. Uncle can barely hold it. Ah? Rong Jiaxin's face changed when she heard the news, and she also stood up. Let's go and have a look, Wang Ming said as he took the lead in running out. Rong Jiaxin rushed out with him in a hurry. Honey, could you go with them and have a look? Ziyan was shocked, and then said to Zhang Han. The Wang family had to be in trouble. Since Zhang Han was knowledgeable, Ziyan wanted him to help the Wangs. Okay. Zhang Han nodded. At this time, Wang Ya also came back. After greeting her, Zhang Han left the hall. Wang Ming and Rong Jiaxin ran very fast and had gone out for more than 50 meters. Zhang Han quickly caught up to the two. According to their running direction, they were going to the old house. What happened? Zhang Han asked. Because Rong Jiaxin told Zhang Han what had happened while running. Not long ago, Wang Zanping found a blessed region in the place of ancestor worship. This area was near the mystical fog sect, and they also noticed the earthquake wave caused by the blessed region. As the elder, Shi Kun brought his disciples here for investigation and directly declared that this place belonged to the mystical fog sect. Therefore, Shi Kun and the Wangs began to argue. When they were about to fight, Shi Kun took out a cup of black tea. He said that this cup of tea contained poison. If Wang Zanping remained alive for 7 days after drinking it, the mystical fog sect would give the Wang family a chance to compete for the blessed region. Facing so many enemies, Wang Zanping drank the tea without hesitation. When he returned to the Wang family, he didn't feel that he had been poisoned, but he still took some precious herbs and antidotes. He didn't feel anything different in the past 6 days. Today was the 7th day, and he was lying in bed at night, as if he was asleep. No one else found him to be abnormal. But just now, Wang Zanping's breathing began to weaken and his temperature began to drop rapidly. It seemed that he would not survive. After hearing the whole thing, Zhang Han frowned slightly. Poisonous tea? He secretly shook his head. If it was just poisonous tea, the poisoned person would show corresponding symptoms, and the antidote would certainly have an effect. Obviously, that was not a simple poison. The three arrived soon at the old house and rushed to the central main house. They went directly into the bedroom, where they saw Wang Zanhong, Wang Gang, and Wang Liang. Wang Gang was pale and worried. The two in the room didn't pay attention to Wang Ming's arrival. They all stared at Wang Zanping, who was lying in bed, cold, and in a state of suspended animation. "How is my eldest uncle?" Wang Ming asked anxiously. However, the room was still quiet. Wang Zanhong pressed Wang Zanping with his palm a few times, and his face became more and more pale. Finally, he withdrew his hand and sighed helplessly. "He's dying." Kaboom! The news seemed to strike everyone in the room like a bolt from the blue. Is he really unable to survive? All the Wangs fell into despair. But just then, they heard someone say, "7 soul poisons?" Swish. In an instant, everyone turned around to look at Zhang Han. Wang Zanhong asked eagerly, "Can you recognize the poison?" Under the crowd's gaze, Zhang Han walked forward 2 steps, looked at Wang Zanping, and said calmly, "This is not poison, but a kind of array formed in the human body with poisonous tea as the catalyst. It's a little related to the 7 soul poisons array." 7 soul poisons array? Everyone was stunned. They looked at Zhang Han in surprise, since they had never heard that name. Wang Ming hurriedly explained, "Han is a martial arts master, a Wu Dao Grand Master." Hiss. Everyone in the room was so surprised that they forgot to breathe. You have a solution?" Wang Zanhong asked in a hurry. While everyone present was waiting expectantly for Zhang Han, he shook his head slightly and said, "I have no idea." The arrival of Zhang Han made the Wangs see hope in despair, but then his words burst the bubble of hope, and the face of the Wangs became pale. But what Zhang Han said next again cheered them up. But Chapter 402, Taking Action. Zhang Han's words gradually caused everyone to hold their breath. They had gone through the process of despair to hope and then back to despair. At this time, they seemed to have hope again. They didn't know what facial expressions to wear. If Zhang Han was one of their younger generation, they would scold him, "Can't you finish your speech at one time?" However, although this man was indirectly regarded as being from their younger generation, he was a Grand Master late stage, who dared to treat him as one of the younger generation. Though they didn't know if Zhang Han was a real martial arts master, they just believed Wang Ming's introduction and Zhang Han's performance. The people present were not shocked that Zhang Han was so young because they were all worried about Wang Zanping. Under everyone's gaze, Zhang Han said calmly, "Though I have no solution to this array, I can break it. But the demands are a little harsh." Zhang Han continued, "I need a yin soul and 99 top-quality jades. Send them here by 11:55 p.m. and I'll save him, or you can prepare his funeral." All of a sudden, as soon as he said that, everyone present was shocked. Yin soul? A yin soul is hardly ever seen in the world, in such a short time. Wang Liang began trembling as he was again desperate. "Even if a yin soul is hard to find, we must find a way." Wang Zanzong, Wang Ming's father, frowned as he said, "Ming, contact the Zhuang Taoist temple and ask them for information about yin souls. Liang, I'll give you an hour to prepare 99 pieces of top-quality jade." So all these core figures of the Wang family began taking action. Only Rong Jiaxin, Zhang Han, Wang Zanzong, and Wang Zanping were left in the bedroom. This. Wang Zanzong made an obeisance to Zhang Han solemnly and then bent slightly. However, he forgot Zhang Han's name and didn't know what to say. His name is Zhang Han, my nephew, Rong Jiaxin reminded him. Master Zhang. Wang Zanping nodded slightly and said in a deep voice, please do me a favor for my eldest brother. No matter whether you succeed or not, my whole family will bear your kindness in mind. It's no matter. Zhang Han looked at him calmly and said, it's just for my aunt. Since you treat her well, I'd like to help you. Wang Zanzong was stunned, and then gave him a wry smile. It's a blessing for my family to marry Jiaxin. So don't stand on ceremony, Mr. Wang. Zhang Han smiled. Zhang Han's smile relaxed the atmosphere in the room. Rong Jiaxin was about to cry. She was moved and pleased. My sister gave birth to a good son. If she knew that Han was so promising, she would be very happy. Rong Jiaxin had guarded Rong Jiali for several years and watched Zhang Han grow up, so she had a good relationship with him. Dad, this is my nephew, and you can treat him as a junior, said Rong Jiaxin. Well, I'll call you Han, and you can call me Elder Zong. Wang Zanzong smiled. Although he said so, he would not really regard Zhang Han as a junior. After all, Zhang Han was a late-stage grandmaster, even better than Wang Zanzong's eldest brother. Wait. Late-stage grandmaster? It took Wang Zanzong a few moments to check Zhang Han's level. Then he looked at the young man and said, You are a late-stage grandmaster? Zhang Han did not know whether to laugh or cry. How long is Wang Zanzong's reflex arc? Knowing that the Wangs were so worried about Wang Zanping, Zhang Han didn't answer Elder Zong's question. Instead, he mobilized his spiritual force and let it flow out of his body. For a time, the room was full of serious and cruel atmosphere, which made everyone feel scared. All three in the room, including Rong Jiaxin, felt the pressure from Zhang Han at the moment. But in less than a second, with Zhang Han withdrawing his qi, the room returned to calm. But the three in the room could not calm down, and they all stared at Zhang Han. For them, before today, the Grandmaster late stage was just a concept. Today, they really understood the power of a Grandmaster. This made the room silent again. Han, we will remember your kindness and repay it later, said Wang Zanzong. Okay, Zhang Han replied and looked at Wang Zanping, who was lying on the bed. After thinking about it, he decided to go back and chat with Xian for a while. Before Zhang Han could leave, Wang Zanhong asked, "What's the meaning of 7 soul poisons?" 7 soul poisons, Zhang Han pondered and explained. This is not a common poison, but a more advanced poison that acts on the soul. After drinking this poison, it will turn into gas and enter his 5 internal organs, Danshan, and soul sense C respectively, absorbing his blood and qi to nourish its toxicity, so it is called 7 soul poisons. Generally, in the early morning of the 7th day, the 7 wounds within the poisoned person's body will be connected into an array, and his soul will die instantly, so it is called the 7 soul poison array. This kind of poison only attacks at the last moment, and the poisoned people are not different from ordinary people at ordinary times. Zhang Han just explained it simply because the 7 soul poisons was a more complex method, and no one could fully understand it in a short time. Even so, his audience was still confused. What is the soul sense C? Wang Zanhong asked. You can regard it as your brain, replied Zhang Han. You said that this kind of poison only attacked the body at the last moment, but eldest brother lost his consciousness at 7 o'clock in the evening. Why, did the poison attack ahead of time? Wang Zanzong asked worriedly. In front of Zhang Han, he felt that he was a reckless man who knew nothing. The poison in his body is only a little related to the 7 soul poisons, and the poison ray in his body is only connected by the wounds in the 5 internal organs, Zhang Han said slowly, and the caster is also a novice, otherwise he would not be in a coma. The 2 elders felt a little ashamed, for they didn't even know what poison the eldest brother had drunk. Maybe in Han Zhang's eyes, they were not even suitable to be a novice. I see, then. Wang Zanzong was about to ask something, but Zhang Han was no longer interested in answering. He waved and said, "Call me when you are ready. I will go back to accompany my wife." "Well, all right." Wang Zanzong nodded and said, "Jiaxin, you accompany him." "Okay." Rong Jiaxin and Zhang Han walked out of the room to go to the main house, and Rong Jiaxin kept expressing her surprise all the way. Grandmaster late stage, it's really daunting. Wang Zanzong shook his head. More importantly, Wang Zanhong took a deep breath and sighed. He is less than 30 years old and can be compared with Emperor King. Both of them are talents, and I admire them so much. Let's get in touch with the others and try our best to get the yin sold. Wang Zanzong said firmly. Zhang Han returned to the house. As soon as he entered the room, he saw Xian, Wang Ya, and the other girls chatting happily. They were not talking about Wang Ya, but about some female topics. While Xian and Wang Ya didn't talk much, both Zuf and Jiang Li were talkative. "Mom, you're back. What happened to Grandpa?" Wang Ya asked. She didn't know that Wang Zanping was poisoned and thought he was ill. "Well, we have found a solution." Rong Jiaxin nodded. After sitting down, she looked at Xian and said, "Thanks to Xion this time, otherwise it would be really troublesome." Hearing this, Zif and Jiang Li both looked at Zhang Han. They felt that Zhang Han was getting more and more powerful. Xian also said with a smile, "Of course, he is very powerful. My husband is a powerful immortal." Zhang Han smiled as it reminded him of what Meng Meng often said, "My papa is powerful." Both the mother and daughter were very proud of Zhang Han. They talked for more than an hour until it was almost 11:30. No one had come to inform them, and Rong Jiaxin was a little worried. "Isn't everything that is needed ready?" She looked at Zhang Han and suggested, "Han, shall we go and have a look?" Zhang Han nodded, "Okay." Xian came out of the bedroom, where she had just gone to look after Meng Meng. Seeing Zhang Han leaving, she said, "Are you going there to have a look?" "Well, I'll be back at about 12. Zhang Han nodded. "Then I'll wait for you." Xian smiled and said, "Go now." After leaving the room, Jiang Li and Zif were not sleepy at all because they often stayed up late. Although Wang Ya was sleepy, she felt that she should accompany them for a while and thus didn't go to rest. They arrived at the old house's bedroom, where the others gathered, and the atmosphere was serious. "We have found the top-level jade. But we still don't know where to get the yin sold." Wang Zanzong sighed when he saw Zhang Han. "Can we not have a ghost? Are there any other alternatives?" Wang Zanhong asked in a hurry. Under everyone's gaze, Zhang Han shook his head. The atmosphere in the room was more oppressive, which made the Wangs feel suffocated. All of a sudden, Wang Ming, standing on the left, stared at Zhang Han and said in a loud voice, Han, can we use the soul of a beast?" Swish. Everyone in the room looked at Wang Ming first, then at Zhang Han. Zhang Han pondered, then finally said yes. Though a yang soul was the best tool to break the 7 soul poisons array, it was rare to see one in the world and was usually replaced by a yin soul. Yin and yang souls were souls of different attributes, with the yang soul nourishing the body and the yin soul breaking the array. As for a beast soul, it was neutral and not a good choice actually, but it was enough to deal with this 5 soul poisons array. Why didn't you say it earlier? Wang Zanzong stared at Wang Liang and said, "Take it out quickly. It's in my house, I'll get it now." Wang Ming hurried out. When he went out, all the people were relieved. Wang Zanzong smiled and said, "He likes to make some strange things." 2 minutes later, Wang Liang came back. He carried in a wooden box, opened it, and took out a small blue flag. "Here, I have to use something to help you see it," Wang Ming said, clapping his hands on the small flag. Then the flag began to shake slightly. Then his left hand picked up a handful of blue powder from the corner of the box. After Wang Ming sprinkled the powder in the air, A palm-sized figure of boar appeared above the flag, which lasted for 2 seconds and then disappeared. Wow! Zhang Han looked at Wang Ming with interest, for it seemed that Wang Ming liked to do weird research. "Give me a place," said Zhang Han. "Go out, let's all go out." Wang Zanzong led the way. "Do I have to stay here, or else this soul flag?" Before Wang Ming finished his words, Zhang Han shook his head and said, "It's not necessary." Wang Ming felt that the weight in his hand had disappeared, because the little flag had left his hands and was now standing 1 meter above Wang Zanping. So Wang Ming also left the room. They gathered in front of the door, which was not closed, waiting to see how Zhang Han took action. Under everyone's gaze, Zhang Han's right hand was slightly raised. All of a sudden, the jade in the box rose in succession and floated quietly above every corner of the room. The next moment, bang, 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 with all the jade exploding and breaking, people outside the door could feel the energy suddenly surging in the room. Is he forming an array? How can an array? Wang Zanhong was interrupted, because something strange happened. Zhang Han's eyes lit up like lightning, illuminating the earth at that moment. Puff, puff, puff. A whirlwind formed in the room. The whirlwind appeared on Wang Zanping. At first, the whirlwind was cyan, then gradually turned to light black. It entered Wang Zanping's chest and disappeared into his body. Then Zhang Han withdrew his palm. That's it? Everyone outside the door was shocked deep inside. Is it so quick? It took less than 10 seconds to finish the whole process. But the next moment... Ah! Wang Zanping suddenly cried and sat up. Puff! He spewed out faint black blood. Ah! Ah! Hum, 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 hum. Ah! Hum, hum. After Wang Zanzong and others rushed into the room, Wang Zanping, who was already awake, stared at the crowd and tried to speak, but he could only grunt. ? Everyone looked at each other, and their original joy turned into confusion. What is going on? Brother, what's wrong with you? Asked Wang Zanhong loudly. Ah, hum, hum, hum. My eldest brother, is this a pig? Wang Zanzong shivered and asked Zhang Han. His words made Wang Zanping blush. A little side effect, he will recover soon. Zhang Han could not help laughing. Hum, hum, ah. Under everyone's gaze, Wang Zanping burped and then could speak normally. I'm cured? Asked Wang Zanping excitedly. Brother, you are finally recovered. We were scared to death. Said Wang Zanhong. Dad. The Wangs came to Wang Zanping's side one after another and were reassured to find that he had recovered. Now Wang Zanping was just weak in qi and blood, which required a 2-day recuperation. Who saved me? Wang Zanping's eyes swept around the house. Well, thanks to Han, he is Jiexin's nephew and a powerful late-stage grandmaster. If it wasn't for him, you wouldn't. I dare not to think about it, Wang Zanzong said, and then he found Zhang Han was not there. Where is Han? Where is Han? Did he go back? Wrong. Jiexin was surprised. He should be back. Wang Ming nodded. I'll thank him tomorrow. Wang Zanping shook his head. The whole family was immersed in the joy of recovery and decided to stay for a while. Zhang Han, of course, went back. He was not interested in watching the Wang family reunite and didn't want to be thanked by them. Now Zhang Han just wanted to go back to sleep with his wife. Yes, sleep. Zhang Han quickened his pace and returned to the hall. The chatting speed of the girls in the hall had slowed down. When Zhang Han came back, they hurried back to their room to rest. Zhang Han and Xian changed into their pajamas and went to bed. Finding his wife was sleepy, Zhang Han cuddled her to sleep. He listened to the breathing sounds of Meng Meng on the small bed on the left and Xian nearby. They seemed to be the most beautiful sounds in the world, which made Zhang Han smile contentedly. The night went by silently. The next day, Meng Meng woke up at 7:30. As soon as she saw Papa, The girl stretched out her little arms and asked Papa to carry her to the big bed. At 8 o'clock, Xian woke up, got up, washed, and dressed. By the time they went out of the room at 8:30, Zif and Zhang Li had already prepared themselves. Wang Ming, Rong Jiaxin, and Wang Ya were drinking tea in the courtyard. When they came out, Wang Ming immediately ordered the servants to make breakfast. Awake, Wang Ming gave them a warm smile and said, "Han, Yan, my father went back to the country in the morning, and he will get some local specialties. When he comes back in the evening, my eldest uncle will cook for you and thank you personally." Zhang Han smiled lightly after hearing that. Meng Meng was not interested in local specialties because there was nothing more delicious than what Papa made for her. The little girl was interested in another thing. "Well, are we going to the amusement park today?" asked Meng Meng. Of course she wouldn't forget about that. "We'll go after lunch." Zhang Han touched Meng Meng's face with a smile. "Great." Meng Meng happily waves her little palm. On the way to the dining hall, they met several Wangs, who greeted them warmly. The Wangs all called Zhang Han according to their generation, and Xian couldn't help laughing at all the kinds of appellations for Zhang Han. After lunch, they went back to the house to take some belongings with them. "It'll be hot at noon. It's sunny today, so you'd better put on your hat," Wang Ya reminded them. "Well, I often wear beautiful little hats," Meng Meng replied. "It's not a pretty hat, it's a pretty Meng Meng," Rong Jiaxin said with a smile. After being praised, Meng Meng laughed happily. The adults also laughed. At this time, a young man rushed through the door. He nodded to Wang Ming, looked at Wang Ya, and said in a deep voice, "Brother Wang, Shi Tanlai of the Shi family is here with his grandfather, Shi Kun. While Shi Kun went to the old house, he is coming here with several people." "What?" Wang Ming frowned. Since Shi Tanlai was Wang Ming's enemy, and Shi Kun had almost killed one elder of the Wang family, this news ignited Wang Ming's anger. At this time, a line of 3 people came slowly from the gate, led by a fat man, who looked very impetuous. He was Shi Tanlai. Seeing him, Wang Ya turned pale and bit her lips. Xian, Zif, and Zhang Li were confused, for they didn't know why Wang Ya fell in love with this guy, such an ugly and bad man. They guessed that Shi Tanlai had never been a good man, who had been hiding his nature. After he got access to the wealth of the Wang family and knew the status of Shi Kun, he immediately exposed his real character. Wang Ya went out with a pale face. Shi Tanlai went to the center of the yard, looked at Wang Ya, took out a contract, and said impatiently, "I won't talk to you about it. Sign the contract to leave empty-handed and we will divorce. You want my property so you keep delaying the divorce. I'll tell you that you won't get a cent." Wang Ming's whole body trembled with rage, and he wanted to smack Shi Tanlai to death with one strike. But behind Shi Tanlai stood 2 heaven stage masters, and Shi Kun was also here. "What property do you have? Who cares about that? What are you?" Wang Ming said angrily. "Oh, Uncle Wang, you should be polite to me. I'm going to take over a company of the family, and you can call me Director Shi later. Of course, I have a lot of property, but I won't give it to others." Shi Tanlai looked at Wang Ya and asked, "Sign it or not?" "I'll go if you refuse to sign. It's better not to divorce, and I think you've heard about my means." "You." Rong Jiaxin clenched her fist. "I'll sign it," Wang Ya said loudly, and then strode up to Shi Tanlai. She took the pen, wrote down her name, threw the contract to Shi Tanlai, turned around, and walked back, saying, "I'm only responsible for my blind eyes and my love for a beast." "Who is the beast? You are no better than me." Shi Tanlai sneered, and suddenly saw a group of people coming out from the side. "My gosh, she's indeed a beauty." His eyes were fixed on Xian and he looked at her and said, "There are so many beauties in your royal family, DSK, the body shape." He was so frivolous. The 2 heaven stage masters behind him also laughed. Were they arrogant? Yes. The Shi family dared to be so arrogant. They had Shi Kun and the mystical fog sect and needed not to be afraid of anyone. Zhang Han on Xian's right looked at them. Come on, Meng Meng. Zhang Han lifted his windbreaker forward to let Meng Meng get in to block her sight. At this time, Zif, Zhang Li, and Xian all felt that something was going to happen. On the other side, Zhao Feng and Ahu were stunned. Where does this fool come from? This kind of person would die in 3 days in the underworld. Their ideas were directly expressed by Zhang Han. He looked at Shi Tanlai curiously and asked, "How have you lived to this day?" Shi Tanlai frowned and replied unhappily, "Do you know who you are talking to?" "Yes." Zhang Han nodded lightly, waved his right hand, and said, "A dead man." As soon as Zhang Han finished speaking, boom, a muffled sound came from Shi Tanlai's body. And then he flew backward. When he was flying backward, someone found that he had stopped breathing. Swish, swish, swish. Everyone present was astonished. The 2 heaven stage masters behind Shi Tanlai were stunned and looked at Zhang Han in horror. How dare he make his move? Shi Tanlai comes from the Shi family. He is the son admitted by the Shi family. Is he not afraid of death? He even dares to kill Shi Tanlai. While they were worried, Zhang Han looked at them. "You two, don't get in the way here," Zhang Han said calmly. But the 2 began to tremble. They quickly turned around and ran out to tell Shi Kun the news. But they were unable to take a single step. An irresistible force rushed from behind. And then their world fell into darkness. Then, there was no then. The moment before their consciousness vanished, they understood what Zhang Han meant by saying "don't get in the way." Chapter 403, Amusement. The cost was too high. Because the cost was life. They couldn't imagine that. A young Wu Dao Grand Master, how could he directly take action? Why? Doesn't he know Shi Kun? Hasn't he heard about the mystical fog sect? Doesn't he know that Xiang Qishan, the sect chief of the mystical fog sect, is a late-stage Grand Master? Is it because Shi Tanlai flirted with the woman beside him? Even as they died, they didn't understand why Zhang Han did it. He's too hot-tempered, isn't he? If they knew that they had just suffered from an undeserved catastrophe, they would stand up and spit out blood. Last night, Zhang Han learned about Shi Tanlai. Although he didn't want to get involved in it, he was very disgusted by it. Today, if he could handle the divorce amicably, Zhang Han wouldn't care about him. Even if his attitude was not good, Zhang Han would only punish him instead of killing him. But he flirted with Xian and laughed with the 2 behind. From that moment on, he was dead in Zhang Han's eyes. Just as human beings could decide the fate of ants at their feet. For the cultivation world, the weak were all ants. There was a lot of crisis in the cultivation world, and even the masters at the level of past tribulation could be regarded as ants by the immortals. In the environment of strength first, everyone seemed cold and callous. Drag them away. Zhang Han waved his hand. Zhao Feng and others nearby reacted quickly and rushed to get the 3 away from the gate. As they got near them, Zhao Feng found that the 3 men had been killed. As for Wang Ming and Rong Jiexin, as soon as those 3 people were sent flying backward, they felt that they had no vital signs. Gulp. A clear and audible swallowing sound came from Wang Ming. He stared at Zhang Han with a numb face and didn't know what to say. Shi Tanlai's death made him very happy and shocked. Facing the 3 bodies, he didn't know what to do at this time. Zif and Zhang Li looked at each other in astonishment. Xian pursed her mouth and said nothing. Wang Ya's facial expression was complicated, but there was relief in her eyes. This. Rong Jiexin looked at Zhang Han with a trembling mouth, and felt that her nephew was very grumpy. He usually seems easygoing, but now he is like a killer without feelings. What did he go through all these years? Rong Jiexin trembled. From being an ordinary person to a late-stage grandmaster, it was so difficult. In addition, when Zhang Han just made a move, she felt that there was an extraordinary and refined chi in him. What is that? Was he born a master? This discovery made her shiver. She felt like a king was standing beside her. At this time, she was also a little confused. There was a sudden silence in the area. Fortunately, A few seconds later, Meng Meng broke the silence and murmured, "Papa, are you going to play hide-and-seek with me?" "Yes." Zhang Han pretended to look everywhere with his eyes. Where is Meng Meng? I can't see her." Poof! Wang Ming was stunned for a moment, almost choked by saliva. He felt it so weird that this martial arts master just became a good father in an instant, who was playing a game that seemed childish to adults. Meng Meng stuck her head out from Zhang Han's black windbreaker and announced, "Meng Meng is here. Wow! Meng Meng is here." Zhang Han grinned and kissed the little girl's face. Meng Meng gave a pleasant laugh, then waved her little arm and urged, "Papa, let's go, we're going to be late." The performance of the girl again cheered up the Wangs. "Let's go and have fun." Zhang Han, holding Meng Meng in one hand and Xian's delicate palm in the other, walked forward. Zhang Li and Zif grinned inexplicably and hurried to follow them with Wang Ya. Wang Ming was the last to take steps. Looking at Zhang Han's back, he was a little dazed, his eyes flashed, and his mind was filled with complicated emotions. It can be seen that without Xian and Meng Meng, in this era, he is bound to become a frightening king of killing. He will be a formidable master. He can even be Emperor King's match. However, it is hard for a hero to pass by a beauty without paying attention to her. Wang Ming's eyes narrowed and a smile rose from the corner of his mouth. But it makes me appreciate him more, since a martial artist without emotion is just a machine for longevity. Then he stepped forward and thought about the death of Shi Tanlai. At this time, he didn't have any more headaches and just felt very happy. Good job. Good job. As a martial art artist, one should be not afraid of the bigwigs and forces. How I wish I could have killed that beast earlier. Although I would have brought troubles to the Wang family. But so what, I could take revenge and move away from Xihang. At this moment, Wang Ming understood Zhang Han's behavior and felt a warm flood bursting out of his body. Clatter, clatter. He felt that he was one step closer to breaking through the barrier of a Wudao Grandmaster. Zhang Han and the others took the limousine, and Zhao Feng and the others went back to take the Land Rover in the back. When they arrived at the gate of the house, the motorcade stopped slowly. In front of 3 Rolls-Royce Phantom, an old man stood there with a dark face. 10 meters away from him stood Wang Zanping and Wang Zanhong, and they all looked at him with great vigilance and a little confusion. Just 2 minutes after Shi Kun appeared, when he was still boasting, the news came that Shi Tanlai was killed. Wang Zanhong and Wang Zanping were happy yet worried. It was dangerous to provoke Shi Kun, and what should the Wang family do about it? Zhang Han was involved in this matter in order to help the Wang family, and they couldn't just stand by. So the 3 of them stared at each other. If Zhang Han and his friends didn't come, they would almost have fought. When he saw the motorcade, his face darkened as he looked at the leading car coldly. Boom! The door opened, and in the eyes of the 3, a man in a black windbreaker got out of the car slowly and calmly. Shi Kun felt strange and dared not act rashly. He frowned slightly and threatened, "It was you who killed him?" "Yes." Zhang Han stopped 5 meters away from Shi Kun and looked at him. "Do you have any complaints?" In an instant, the expressions of Wang Zanping and Wang Zanhong froze. Does he intend to have a battle? They were ready to fight and got Zhang Han, the late-stage master's help. The strength of them together might be enough to defeat Shi Kun. Shi Kun was a little confused because he couldn't guess the origin of Zhang Han. "Do you know that he is my descendant?" Shi Kun's voice cooled. "I know." A little emotion appeared in Zhang Han's voice. It was impatience. Because the old man stood in front of the car and blocked their way. "Do you know that I'm the 3rd elder of the mystical fog sect?" Shi Kun's gaze was freezing. "Yes," replied Zhang Han. "So?" Shi Kun activated the spiritual force within his body and seemed to be ready to fight. He said in a vicious tone, "Now that you know he is my descendant and I'm Shi Kun with the influence of the mystical fog sect, why would you dare to kill him?" Before he had finished speaking, he was interrupted by a light voice. "What are you? What's the mystical fog sect?" Shikan suddenly froze, his mouth could not stop shaking, as if he were hearing to a joke. Wang Zanping and his brother's eyes widened. For the first time, they heard someone look down on Shikan and the mystical fog sect in this way. What kind of person is Han? Feeling a little confused, they looked around like two onlookers. I killed him. Zhang Han stared at Shikan and slowly said, "Do you have any comments for me?" Shikan's release of chi became stronger, but he began to feel uneasy. Who is he? What's his background? He broke my 5 ghosts poisonous array? Such a young Wu Dao grandmaster, is he a disciple from those large sects? Shikan hesitated. He wanted to fight, but he was worried because he didn't know what grandmaster level Zhang Han was. He was not afraid of Wang Zanping, who was at the peak of the mid-stage, and Wang Zanhong, who was at the early stage. But he was not sure whether or not he could defeat the young man. What's more, it was only Shitan Lai and 2 bodyguards who had died today, since Shikan had married 16 wives, who gave birth to a lot of sons and grandchildren. He didn't care about the life or death of just one of them. But at this time, he hesitated whether or not he should fight for his dignity. After thinking for 2 seconds, he gave up, withdrew his chi, and asked, "Who are you?" "Zhang Han Yang." Zhang Han finally took a look at him and told him the name directly. "I'm telling you face to face that I killed He Qingshan in Hong Kong. Do you still want to fight me?" After that, Zhang Han turned around to get in the car. But before Zhang Han got in the car, Shikan said in a cold voice, "I hope you can be so calm in a few days." After that, he took a glance at Wang Zanping, got in the leading car, and left. Han. When Wang Zanping was about to say something, slam, Zhang Han directly closed the car door. This. The 2 elders gave each other a wry smile. It seemed that Zhang Han didn't want to talk with them at all. Is he in such a hurry to go to the amusement park? What's so interesting about the amusement park? After thinking about it, they decided to wait until Zhang Han came back in the evening to discuss the matter with him. Since Shikan chose to leave, he would not cause any trouble for the time being. After Zhang Han got in the car, Wang Ming and Rong Jiaxin both looked at him with strange facial expressions. At the same time, they were thinking, he treated Shikan with this attitude. He's so powerful. They didn't expect that Shikan, who always liked to fight for his dignity, could bear Zhang Han's provocation. Who is that man? Xian looked at Zhang Han and asked. When Wang Ming was about to answer this question, Zhang Han said, "An insignificant old man." Okay. Wang Ming realized that they couldn't treat Zhang Han as a normal person at all. With the gradual contact with Zhang Han, it could be felt that, on the one hand, he was sharp, plain, and extraordinary, and on the other hand, he was hardworking, tender, and considerate. Which is the real him? Wang Ming thought about it. A while later, when he looked at Zhang Han playing with Meng Meng with a smile, he suddenly understood. These 2 styles were actually the difference between Zhang Han's treatment toward his family and outsiders. Fortunately, I have the chance to be the former. In this case, if all the people present were Wangs or adults, the atmosphere would be much more serious. But because of the existence of the little princess, within a few minutes, the atmosphere in the car was happy again. Meng Meng seemed to have a kind of magic that could make others happy. All the people who saw her liked her and wanted to play with her. The Songtown amusement park was not far away from the Wang family's house, and it took them 20 minutes to drive there. Meng Meng was so happy to go to the amusement park. Her big eyes flashed at the crowd around her as she murmured, "There are so many people. Papa, look over there. There is a big bear, but it's not as tall as Big Hai. Mama, look over there. It's Princess Aisha. I like her very much." When they got to the amusement park, Meng Meng became more active. In fact, the amusement park was very attractive to Xian, Zif, and others. It was also fun for them to play once in a while. The Songtown amusement park was a well-known comprehensive theme park of Xihang. It was located in the central area of Xihang, with developed transportation, The park had the Maya tribe, Lost Jungle, Adventure Island, and other themed areas. They had a good time the whole morning, but they didn't play on all the rides because of the long lines. Even Xian played on the exciting rides: hanging roller coaster, hammer of rain god, flying in the sky, fashionable flying man, etc. Meng had played on more, such as bug teams, music boats, bumper cars, and so on. They played around until 1 o'clock in the afternoon and were ready to go out for lunch. On the way out, Rong Jiaxin seduced Meng with dragon's beard candy and successfully held the little girl in her arms. Finally, Zhang Han and Xian followed them. While Zhang Han put his hands in his pocket at will, Xian held his arm on the right. Xian with her long hair was wearing a white fashionable shirt and red shorts, revealing 2 white long legs, and wearing lovely pink sneakers on her feet. Besides this, she wore sunglasses today to avoid being recognized. Because they were close, Zhang Han's gaze drifted to Xian as he walked. He looked in from the neckline of Xian, appreciated her graceful posture, and felt a cluster of flames burning in his body, which made him feel very hot and dry. Xian felt it and turned her eyes to Zhang Han, but then the small tip of her tongue reached out secretly and licked her red lips naughtily, deliberately seducing Zhang Han. Zhang Han felt even hotter and began looking at Xian with burning eyes. Then he deliberately extended his arm and felt her soft body. Xian pursed her lips, straightened her waist, and sent her soft body to Zhang Han's hand. Wow! Zhang Han's eyes moved as he leaned over to Xian's ear and said softly, "You little goblin." "What?" Xian whispered in his ear, "Want to eat me?" Xian's voice made Zhang Han want to take action. Gulp. Hearing the voice of Zhang Han's saliva and looking at his eager expression, Xian smiled sweetly, revealing 2 rows of white teeth. The others didn't notice their interaction. Even if they did notice the couple, they would immediately look away and begin thinking about what to eat for lunch. "It's time, Grand Aunt." Meng looked around with her big clear eyes and stretched out his little arm to Zhang Han, saying, "Papa, give me a hug. This little girl really likes her father." Rong Jiaxin gave Meng to Zhang Han. The moment Meng touched her dad, she began smiling. "The dish in the Dingxiang restaurant in front of us is good, and they are all authentic fried dishes. Let's go there and have a taste, okay? It's only a 5-minute journey. In the afternoon, we'll go to Lan Water Park and then come back," Rong Jiaxin suggested. "Okay, let's go." Xian nodded. Now Rong Jiaxin understood that Xian was in charge of the large group. Zhang Li could do anything. Zif was like a follower, and Zhang Han. This was a man who was obedient to his daughter. Rong Jiaxin felt it so funny, though Zhang Han was so powerful. He had a completely different attitude toward his family. If she didn't know the truth, she would believe that it was Zhang Han who had married into Xian's family. But Xian was very gentle and considerate. She would ask Zhang Han first about some important things, which made Rong Jiaxin very satisfied. She was pleased for her sister because there were so few beautiful and considerate daughters-in-law like Xian. "Aunt, when you are free to come to Hong Kong, you must try the dishes made by Zhang Han himself. They are very delicious," Xian said with a proud smile. "Really? Can Han cook? When we get a chance, let's have a cooking competition," Wang Ming said with a smile. Everyone became talkative when it came to this topic. Zif, my brother-in-law is unique in cooking. Zhang Li, my brother is unique in cooking. Meng, my papa is unique in cooking. Wang Ming was stunned. "Well, how can I compete with Zhang Han? Can Han cook?" "Wonderful. Do you usually cook?" asked Rong Jiaxin with a smile. "I haven't told you yet, Aunt." Xian smiled and said, "Zhang Han is running a restaurant and it's a prosperous business. When I have time, I also cook with him. He is so considerate that he never lets me clean the kitchen. Therefore, if I want to cook, he will let me guide him to do it." "Really?" Rong Jiaxin smiled and shook her head. "A man who knows how to love his wife is a good man." Alas, Wang Ming sighed. Now I admire Han more and more. That's not all. Zhang Li took over the topic. Now the membership card of my brother's restaurant is priced at 10 million yuan, and we have sold many cards. Huh? Rong Jiaxin and Wang Ming were shocked. What is sold for 10 million yuan? Wang Ya came up with 2 pieces of dragon's beard candy. The restaurant's membership card. Only members can eat the dishes that my brother cooks, Zhang Li replied. Papa, I want to eat that candy. Meng Meng's eyes were shining. We'll be in the restaurant soon, let's eat in the restaurant, my little greedy cat. Xian reached out her fingers and scraped Meng Meng's little nose. Then, when shall we get to the restaurant? Asked Meng Meng. We're almost there, it's right ahead. Rong Jiaxin smiled kindly. While the others were also talking about the restaurant, Wang Ming was not particularly shocked by the price of the membership card. After all, they were dishes cooked by a Wudao grandmaster. He didn't realize that all the members went to Zhang Han's restaurant because the dishes were so delicious. Before they got to the restaurant, Zhang Han's cell phone rang. The call was from Xuanhuan. Hello. Zhang Han's facial expression changed as if he had heard something interesting. Chapter 404, Mountains and Rivers Flag. Xuanhuan reported one thing. The last 2 membership cards were sold yesterday afternoon. Dozens of guests were disappointed when they left with nothing. Until today, more people had been coming to buy the membership card. Xuanhuan was overwhelmed. All the people who went there were powerful figures. He was frightened to tell them that the cards were sold out. However, Xuanhuan gradually found out that every guest's reaction was warm and understanding, and strong feelings of pride welled up inside him. Many asked if there would be membership cards for sale in the future, and they were willing to make an advance booking. So Xuanhuan called to ask about it. Hearing that, Zhang Han smiled and said, no more membership for the time being. 20 membership cards were sold. If all those guests went there at the same time, the restaurant would be full. More membership cards would only attract more guests, and it would be too crowded. Zhang Han didn't want his restaurant to be noisy and chaotic. Okay. Xuanhuan nodded and said, there is another thing. The restaurant hasn't been open in 2 days. The customers complained a lot. The company's restaurant was going to recruit a chef before. There was a chef. Oh no. The top chef, it was Wang Long. He wanted to come here, and he didn't care about the salary. He only wished to use the best ingredients. I thought if we let him, he could come here and make fried rice with eggs for guests first. Zhang Han pondered and finally said yes. All right, don't touch the tableware inside the cupboard next to the stove. Got it, boss. Okay. Zhang Han then hung up the phone. Is someone new coming to our restaurant to cook? Xian asked, curious. Wang Long, Zhang Han replied. He applied to be the chef of the company's restaurant. He would cook in our restaurant first, because we've been closed for a couple of days, and Xuanhuan said that the guests were complaining. Poof. Xian laughed out loud. She found it amusing. Seeing her like that, Zhang Han was also smiling with his eyes. Xian's coldness from the beginning gradually turned into a smile now and then. Now she could laugh out loud. Love could change a lot sometimes, and that was what made it beautiful. The group of people arrived at the restaurant while chatting. Its environment was comfortable. They enjoyed a nice meal. After a 10-minute rest, they went back to the amusement park and went into its water amusement section. The park was huge with dozens of popular water amusement facilities, such as a children's water play area, surfing pool, water slideways, and so on. The main point of this travel was to let Meng Meng have a good time, so each of them selected and tried some rides suitable for children. It was getting dark before they could finish half of them. The park closed at 9, but they packed up and went home at 6. Meng Meng had a great time and returned with them contentedly. When they arrived at Wang's residence, Wang Zanping was already cooking some local food. Wang Zanping and his family all sat together at the table. Before the meal, Wang Zanping solemnly thanked Zhang Han. That's when many people found out about this relative of Rong Jiaxin. It was he who had saved Wang Zanping. Everyone changed their looks, they became more polite and showed more respect. The meal started. A moment later, Wang Zanping noticed that Zhang Han had almost finished the food. He looked at him keenly and said, "Han, I have prepared a pot of a superior Duong Pao tea in the yard. Let's go and have a taste." Zhang Han looked at him, knowing he had something to say, so he nodded. The little girl put down her spoon and muttered, "I also want to drink Duong Pao tea. Mama hasn't finished yet. Would you like to stay here with me?" Xian smiled and said, "Stay here with your mom, Daddy will be back soon." Zhang Han smiled and touched Meng Meng's little head. "Fine, hurry up, Papa." Meng Meng pouted. "Okay." Zhang Han nodded, got up, and went out with Wang Zanping. In the courtyard of the dining hall, there were several pavilions, and they sat in the one in the back. There was a pot of freshly brewed tea on the table. Wang Zanping poured the tea for Zhang Han and said bluntly, "My grandfather, Wang Rufing, was an array master. He and Xiang Donglai went to the same sect, called Kimen. Kimen was a famous array sect in the Hua nation at that time. Other sects would ask an old ancestor to set up a large array for them. Oh, by the way, Xiang Donglai was Xiang Kishan's grandfather, who is now the leader of the mystical fog sect. Back in the early days, we actually come from the same sect. Xiang Kishan's learning was more comprehensive, so his sect could expand to be the strongest sect in the area of Xiang. However, our Wang family was declining rapidly. Wang Ming was the only proficient one in younger generation. Depression glimmered in Wang Zanping's eyes, as he took a sip of tea and said, "Back then, my grandfather Wang Rufing was a little better than Xiang Donglai. They were brothers at first, but later they turned against each other for some reason. Xiang Donglai was expelled from the sect, and he started to hate my grandfather even more." "What are you trying to say?" Zhang Han couldn't help interrupting him. He had no interest in the older generation's grudges. Wang Zanping smiled and said, "Later, my grandfather got the sacred treasure of the sect, Mountains and Rivers flag." "Sacred treasure?" Zhang Han paused. "You don't know about the sacred treasure?" Wang Zanping asked. "No, treasures here are classified into Huang grade, profound grade, earth grade, and heaven grade. Heaven grade treasures are rare, sacred grade treasures rank above them. Only some big sects have a sacred grade treasure. It has great power. Divine grade ranks the highest, and a treasure of that rank is called a divine grade treasure. Divine grade treasures are extremely rare, they could represent a sect. I knew of barely 20 divine grade treasures in 100 years, Wang Zanping explained. It has a very impressive name. Zhang Han smiled. After further information, he knew that the Huang grade was the 0 to 1st stage spirit treasure, then profound grade, earth grade, heaven grade, sacred grade, and divine grade were almost equal to the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th stage, respectively. Since there were many 5th stage spirit treasures in this world, obviously there was a golden age of practicing martial arts a long time ago, but now, the spiritual chi of heaven and earth was exhausted, and it was even harder for people to make further progress in martial arts. The Mountains and Rivers flag is a sacred treasure of Kimen. My grandfather got it, but it went missing later. Then the sect was torn apart by a battle and grandfather was seriously injured. He passed away after that. That was why he had few apprentices. Later, Xiang Donglai came back and built the mystical fog sect at the old site of Kimen. He also failed to find the Mountains and Rivers flag. Until recently, the Mountains and Rivers flag remained missing. However, there was a sudden fluctuation not long ago in the place where our Wang family hold rituals. It turned out that there was something else in grandfather's tomb. My guess was that the Mountains and Rivers flag might be in it. The mystical fog sect's people also found out the news. Later, I was poisoned by tea. 7 days passed. I was still alive. The mystical fog sect informed me that the Wang family could fight with them 2 days later. If we won, The ritual place would be ours. If we lost, they would take over the place. It's dangerous to fight them in the array. This time, I'll try my best to keep the place. If something happens to me, I need to ask you a favor." Wang Zanping shook his head and said, "What can I do to help?" Zhang Han asked directly, "Protect my family and send them away from Xiang." Wang Zanping sighed and said, "I'm afraid that Xiang Qishan would take the opportunity to hurt my family. It's just a sacred treasure. Why did you make this desperate move?" Zhang Han asked, baffled. If a person is fully aware that it is a dead end for him and he doesn't have the strength to overcome the difficulties, but he decides to take that road anyway, isn't he a total fool? If it's just the mountains and rivers flag, I won't take the risk, Wang Zanping said with a wry smile, because it might be our family's last hope. You have seen the younger generation of our family. If our people continue to be in a decadent state, after 2 generations, the Wang family would decline to being an ordinary family. Oh. Zhang Han nodded and said, "Regarding what you asked, I promise to help you." Then Zhang Han put down his teacup and went to the dining hall. Wang Zanping was relieved and smiled. He drank the last sip of tea, looking at the distant scenery, and walked into the old house. In fact, Zhang Han understood Wang Zanping's choice. The idea of a martial arts family was deeply rooted in them. They didn't want to see the family declining in their own hands. A family's descendants were the most suitable people for the inheritance, and sometimes there would be inheritance between blood relatives. That was more important. However, Zhang Han knew that the Wang family could hardly inherit through blood relatives. Emperor King might have a way to do that. Without blood relatives, inheritance meant nothing. After staying in the dining hall for a few minutes, they went home. Rong Jiaxin and her family stayed and chatted with them in the hall. Wang Ya bought many toys for Meng Meng, and the little girl sat beside Zhang Han and played cheerfully. Without seeing each other for many years, they talked about almost everything. At 9:30, Zhang Han glanced around. Why are they still talking? Xian teased him in the daytime, so he determined to prove himself at night. Zhang Han waited 5 more minutes, but their lively conversation didn't seem to have an end. Fortunately, Meng Meng yawned at the moment. "Do you want to sleep?" Zhang Han asked. "No." Meng Meng pouted and answered. She had yet to finish playing with her new toys. "Daddy heard you yawn." "Really?" Meng Meng paused and didn't remember whether she had yawned or not. "You did. It's time to go to bed. How about playing tomorrow?" Zhang Han asked with a smile. Rong Jiaxin and Zhang Li also stood up. "It's late, we should rest." So they all went back to their rooms and prepared to sleep. Zhang Han took Meng Meng to bed and began to tell her stories. A few minutes later, Xian came in, closed the door, and changed her pajamas in front of Zhang Han. Watching this scene, Zhang Han was aroused. His voice telling her the story was getting lower. After Xian changed into her pajamas and went to bed, Zhang Han looked at Meng Meng. The little girl was still staring at him with big eyes and listening intently. So he kept telling the story. 10 minutes later, the little lady finally fell asleep. Gently carrying her to the small bed, Zhang Han quickly returned to the big bed and embraced Xian in his arms. "Well, what do you want? You're bad. To eat you up." Zhang Han looked at her keenly. They were both caught up in the mood, and the air became hotter. About 10 minutes later, Xian blushed and said in a sexy voice, "Let's go to the guest room." So they put on their pajamas, quietly left, and went to the guest room. Xian's sweet and repressed groan intermittently came from the room. It was a melody with power and rhythm. The smell of lust permeated the air. Chapter 405, UY. The two of them hugged each other, looking at Xian beneath him, who was charming and attractive. Zhang Han felt comfortable from the bottom of his heart. Gradually, their temperature became increasingly high as Zhang Han moved faster and faster, and Xian could not help crying out in low voice. After Zhang Han growled, Zhang Han turned on his side with his arm around Xian, feeling the warmth of their bodies. At that moment, BZZ. Suddenly, The phone on the tea table vibrated. Zhang Han stopped moving. After he stretched out his arm, the mobile phone floated over. He picked up the phone and heard a voice containing great dissatisfaction. "Little boy, I heard that you want to ruin my sect. Why?" Zhang Han was somewhat shocked and said, "I want to ask you where I can find my parents." "Who are your parents?" "Zhang Guanyu and Rong Jiali." The man on the line fell silent all of a sudden. After 10 seconds, he said, "What's your name?" "Zhang Han." "Tell me the information about my parents," Zhang Han said in a deep voice. "Boy, do you think I will tell you directly, since you beat so many disciples of my sect and claimed that you were going to destroy my sect? You must be dreaming. What do you want to say?" Zhang Han slightly frowned. At that time, Xian was obviously a little nervous because they would know whether or not they could get the info in a minute. "Of course, it is conditional for you. Ahem, my sect is out of repair for a long time. I am not very greedy and want you to give me 1/10 of your deposit." "No problem, tell me the information," Zhang Han said directly. "Now?" The man snorted and said, "How can I tell you the info since I have not seen the money? Nice try. Go to my sect at 12 o'clock tomorrow." After finishing saying that, he hung up the phone. Zhang Han glanced at his mobile phone and became lost in thought. "We'll get the info tomorrow, and I hope it's good." Xian curled her lips and said, "Yes." Zhang Han nodded. "Let's go back to the bedroom, and these bed sheets." Looking at the sheets that had witnessed what happened before, Xian pulled her bottom lip between her teeth and said, "Take them to our bedroom." "Okay." Zhang Han smiled and picked up Xian, then he pulled out the sheets and quietly returned to the bedroom. Originally, Zhang Han was desiring to have sex with Xian again because they still wanted to try the new positions one after another, even though they had used a few just now. However, the call he just received affected his mood more or less. So, they slept together as usual. At 6 o'clock the next day, Meng woke up. She opened her eyes in a daze, then looked around. Before she opened her mouth, Zhang Han opened his eyes and smiled softly after catching sight of her. SHH. Zhang Han reached out his finger and put it to his lips, then whispered, "Huh? Keep quiet." Meng glanced at Xian, who was still sleeping soundly, then stretched out her small arms to Zhang Han quietly. Zhang Han carried her to the big bed, then the two of them whispered and played with each other. Since Meng was crawling around, Xian soon woke up. Previously, Xian would have woken up the instant she noticed any movement on the bed because she was subconsciously worried about Meng, but now, she felt at ease every time she slept in Zhang Han's arms. Her quality of sleep had improved greatly, and she always could stay in bed. Even the dreams that she dreamed were sweet occasionally. After getting up, they washed themselves. At around 7 o'clock, Zhang Li and Zif also got up, during which Long Jiexin and her family arrived in the living room. "Shall we go to the zoo after having breakfast?" Rong Jiexin asked with a smile. "Fine, but Zhang Han is going to find someone at noon," Xian replied. "Let's go to the zoo in the morning, so he can do his private work at noon. We can go to other places in the afternoon." Rong Jiexin nodded. In the past few days, she had planned to take Meng to various places, so that she could enjoy herself. If there were only adults present, she would not have made such full travel arrangements. Therefore, after everyone finished breakfast, they got into the cars and reached the Xihang Zoo. On account of a holiday, the crowds flowed along the street and it took them a few minutes to park the car. When they were about to enter the zoo, an obese man with a gold necklace, and a tall woman, who held a fat boy about 6 or 7 years old, passed by. While walking, the fat boy said loudly, "Dad, I learned new words yesterday. In the zoo, there are small tigers, small squirrels, deers, bang." Before he finished listing them, the man kicked the fat boy in the ass. "Be serious. What a mess." The fat boy was totally dumbfounded. He heard that his classmates had been praised after telling their parents what they had learned. "Huh? Meng Meng blinked her big clear eyes and thought for a while, then she looked at Zhang Han and asked in a low voice, "Papa, what is a small tiger?" Before Zhang Han answered, Meng Meng asked again, "Is it a small tiger?" "Yes, it's a small tiger," Zhang Han laughed and replied. "Is the small tiger also called the small tiger?" After thinking for a moment, Zhang Han responded, "Ha." He said that because he was inarticulate, he could not tell Meng Meng that people said those terms with a strong accent in order to make their words sound cute. "Well, is big lion equivalent to big hi-hi?" Meng Meng asked again. "Yes, Dai is a gorilla," Xian chuckled and said. "A gorilla?" Zhang Han shook his head with a smile, considering that Dai was less and less like an average gorilla and fearing that it would become a King Kong soon. "Alas, I miss big hi-hi, Papa. When do you take big hi-hi and little hi-hi out to play?" Meng Meng asked Zhang Han while staring at him. Originally, Xian would have refused her to take them out in the past, but now her outlook on the world completely changed. Therefore, she did not refuse Meng Meng's proposal. "We can bring them out to play next time." Zhang Han reached out his hand and touched Meng Meng's tender face. "Great, great. Papa is the best man. Mwah, mwah, mwah." Meng Meng moved close to Zhang Han and kissed his cheeks several times, which provoked Zhang Han's hearty laughter. Wang Ming shook his head slightly and sighed with emotion in his heart. Just as Xian said, Zhang Han always followed Meng Meng's advice and was totally not strict with her. Then he recalled that he had been strict with Wang Ya in her childhood. If he had treated Xiao more gently, like Xion, she would have been more outgoing. Anyhow, a father's love is as great as a mountain, even though the way fathers express their love is different from that of mothers. While heading to the zoo, Wang Yi asked curiously, "Cousin, do you raise a gorilla?" "Yes, its name is Big Hi-Hi." Meng Meng answered while gesturing, "Big Hi-Hi is really tall, much taller than Papa. It always throws me up so high in the air, like this, and little Hi-Hi, it is a big dog, which can be ridden by me, it keeps running." Judging by the little gal's words and her expression, she indeed had fun with Dai and little Hai, regarding them as her good friends. They entered the zoo and visited various exhibits. Although Meng Meng had gone to the zoo before, she could recognize more animals every time she came here. Then, they stayed in the acrobatic hall for a long time, watching the performances of the training elephants and tigers. So the morning passed. After visiting the zoo, Rong Jiaxin looked at Xian and asked, "Why don't we have lunch at a restaurant near West Lake to taste the fresh fish?" "Okay." Xian nodded. When they were about to get into the cars, Wang Ming walked to the Land Rover behind his car and said, "You can go the first and I will bring Xiaofan to the King Fing sect." After saying goodbye, Zhang Han and Wang Ming headed for the eastern suburbs, while the others went to the restaurant they had chosen. At the same time, at the Shi family's residence in Xihang, there was a large number of disciples as well as companies of the Shi family, which was sound financially, located in a manner that was 4 times larger than that of the Wang family. The residence of the Shi family was not only heavily built up, but also old. Since only Shi Kun and his third concubine lived there, it was no exaggeration to say that he was like a local despot there. At that point, in the hall of the main residence sat 7 or 8 people, who were all superiors of the Shi family. Shi Kun was sitting in the head seat, expressionless. "Dad, Dan Lai shouldn't die in vain. We need to kill the man who hit him. Even if he has a somewhat strong background, one with great power cannot defeat a local villain. In Xihang, no one has dared to attack a man of the Shi family in years." The middle-aged man said coldly, "Stop talking nonsense." Shi Kun frowned and said, "Do you know why I asked you to come over?" "No." A few men shook their heads. "Ha." Shi Kun sneered and said while looking at the middle-aged man who had spoken before, "Shi Tai, I know what you do secretly. Do you think that the few good-for-nothings can defeat him if you want to get revenge? But I am so angry. Even if we can't make trouble for him, We can get revenge on a lot of other disciples of the Wang family. Am I wrong to kill them since he killed a disciple of our Shi family? Shi Tai said coldly. Don't ask for trouble, you can't afford to provoke that person. Shi Kun frowned deeply, remembering the phone call. The origin of Zhang Han weighed heavily on his heart. Fortunately, he had not chosen to take action that day, otherwise he would have been in a dilemma. In fact, if Zhang Han got assistance from the two men of the Wang family, Shi Kun would be no match for him. Who is that guy? Someone asked with curiosity. Anyone who could convince Shi Kun and make him give up getting revenge was obviously someone extraordinary. He lives in Hong Kong. Before he came here, he killed He Kengshan, who ranked 17th on the list in Hong Kong and was very close to being a martial artist at the Grandmaster late stage. Do you understand? Shi Kun took a deep breath and said slowly, now, his name, Zhang Han, has been really popular in Hong Kong, and he is not an easy person to deal with. As soon as he finished speaking, the faces of everyone present all changed, and they were in an uproar. What? Did he kill He Kengshan? Is he so formidable? How is it possible? Shi Tai's face gradually turned pale. He had thought that Zhang Han was just a martial artist at the Grandmaster early stage, and had not expected that he would actually be so awesome like a powerful dragon. Actually, there were very wide gaps among the early, middle, and late stages of the Wudao Grandmaster. Every time he was promoted to a higher stage, his strength would be improved a lot. What should we do? Can't we change our passive position? Shi Tai gritted his teeth and said, the most senior man of the Shi family occupies the 10th position of the list in Xihang, who is a famous master at the Grandmaster late stage. Now, the news that Tan Lai was directly killed by the man has already been spread out. If our Shi family keeps quiet, then, well, I'm not going to keep silent. At that time, Shi Kun said all of a sudden, did you forget about the competition between our Shi family and the Wang family tomorrow? Tomorrow, we will fight against the Wang family in formations. In order to win that place for rituals, they are bound to spare no efforts. By then, Shi Kun said in a gradually cooling tone, Zhang Han will definitely go to watch the competition. In fact, I'm going to make the Wang family disappear from Xihang, so I don't mind leaving him there. After finishing speaking, he waved his hand and said, make what I said known to others. I want to kill them under everyone's gaze. Okay. On the other side, after Wang Ming drove for more than half an hour, they arrived at the territory of the Qingfeng sect again. In front of the main gate stood two disciples, who got a fright upon catching sight of Zhang Han. Hurry up, go. They did not even look at the door, but ran straight inside. So, when Zhang Han and Wang Ming got to the gate of the inner court, there stood more than 100 people, each with knives or sticks and an aggressive face. All disciples, listen to my order. The first elder shouted seriously, activate the formations. Clatter, clatter. The crowd quickly moved. This time, Zhang Han did not take any action, but calmly looked at these disciples of the Qingfeng sect in front of him. He saw them running hurriedly and standing in two rows, like students lining up, as if they formed a passageway to the inner courtyard. Zhang Han found this scene a little weird. What is the point of making such a showy formation? Come in please, our master is already waiting in the lobby, the first elder said loudly. Huh. Wang Ming was somewhat shocked and whispered in Zhang Han's ear, this formation seems to show the Qingfeng sect's hospitality, and it looks so grand since too many people join in this formation. Well. He nodded and walked inside. The first elder and the second elder led the way on one side, and all the way was flat. The inner courtyard was much smaller, with plenty of houses on both sides, and there was a large house in the innermost area. After walking into the lobby, he saw a white-bearded old man sitting in the head seat inside with a calm expression, whose eyelids were drooped down, as if he were sitting in meditation and surrounded by immortal breath. The instant Zhang Han stepped in, he opened his eyes all of a sudden and looked at him. After sizing him up for a while, he said flatly, Here you are." Although his voice was very low, what he said was clearly heard by everyone present. Zhang Han found it somewhat strange. Judging from his imposing manner, he was probably an elixir monk, but in fact, he was just at the Grand Master early stage. However, Zhang Han felt that the breath around his body was still very mysterious and he could not figure out what it was. He thought that the old man should be a powerful martial artist, much stronger than Elder Hong. After staring at him for a moment, Zhang Han stretched out his hand without any hesitation, then held a bank card between his fingers and slightly shook his fingers. Whoosh! The bank card seemed to turn into a golden light as it flew over. As Ui shook his finger, the bank card suspended on his finger. The breath surrounding Ui changed, and he asked with a smile, "How much?" 100 million yuan, Zhang Han calmly replied. Puff, "How much?" Ui suddenly coughed twice, then asked with a dumbfounded expression, 100 million yuan? Do you have so much money? Hiss. The first elder trembled, feeling a little excited. "We've made a fortune, we've made a fortune," the second elder mumbled. Zhang Han ignored their reactions and stared at Ui, then said in a deep voice, "I have given you money, now, tell me the information." Chapter 406, Good News. "How are you so rude?" Ui's eyes widened greatly, and he said with dissatisfaction, "Don't you know how to respect the aged and take good care of the young?" "What?" Zhang Han raised his eyebrows slightly, and the spiritual force in his body was like a volcano, ready to erupt. After hearing his words, the faces of the first elder and the second elder changed. Is this guy really going to destroy this old temple? Wang Ming also felt stressed, giving a wry smile secretly. He was afraid that Zhang Han would take action if Chief kept talking nonsense. Wang Ming has no doubts as to Zhang Han's decisiveness. Just as he had killed Shi Tanlai and another two men before, he was too casual, killing whenever and doing whatever he wanted. But at that time, Ui's expression changed, and he smiled. "For the sake of the money, you can come with me." After finishing saying that, Ui stood up and took the lead to the back door. Zhang Han followed him. He had just revealed some breath to warn him, showing that he did not want to listen to nonsense. He did not plan to destroy something, and he thought that Ui was somewhat strange in the meantime. The breath he had revealed just now was at the Grand Master late stage, but Ui's gaze had been as calm as before, even cherishing a hint of interest. Zhang Han, therefore, discovered by virtue of his soul sense that Ui seemed to be a mysterious man. However, regardless of Ui's identity and background, Zhang Han only cared about the news of his parents. In his mind, there existed only three kinds of people, specifically, relatives, passers-by, and enemies. For his relatives, he really cared about and treated them gently. For passers-by, he would ignore them, showing indifference. For his enemies, he only wanted to kill them. Obviously, Ui was just a passerby in his view now. Seeing Wang Ming and the two elders following them, Ui waved his hand and said, "Don't follow us, you should wait here for a while." The three of them stopped, watching Zhang Han and Ui walking to the back hill via the back door. Not far from the sect lay a mountain covered with lush green vegetation. Neither of them said anything along the way, but just walked silently. They walked to the foot of the mountain and passed a 10-meter-high rock pile, which was formed by pieces of rocks at random. "Your father left something for you here," Ui said with a smile. After hearing his words, Zhang Han was somewhat amazed. Then his soul sense was released out of his body, turning into wisps of filaments and drilling into the rock pile to explore. Suddenly, his soul sense detected and was blocked by a separate area. Oh? Something is weird. The soul sense was blocked for two reasons. The first was that the power of his soul sense was just at the beginning stage, not strong enough, while the second reason was that the stuff inside was of relatively high quality. If it was a treasure sniffing nose, activate. As Zhang Han activated his treasure-sniffing nose in an instant, all kinds of breaths overwhelmed him. In that rock pile, Suddenly, an extremely fragrant smell of treasures poured at him constantly, like a surging river. A fourth stage treasure. A spirit treasure close to the fifth stage. All of a sudden, Zhang Han's expression froze, but then he felt confused and wondered whether or not the treasure had been left there by his father. He, therefore, looked at Ui. Ui still smiled. After he waved his hand slightly, the stones standing on both sides of the rock pile suddenly slanted. The rock pile changed its shape. Clatter, clatter. Something in the center seemingly broke out of the earth, and meanwhile, all the stones rolled to both sides. Gradually, a stone, like a right arm, extended out to Ui, on which was a box as big as a palm. If you had not entered the martial arts world, this treasure would be taken by your father, but now you are at the early stage of the building base. Obviously, you have obtained great fortunes, so you can naturally take this stuff. Ui handed the box over, smiling. After he finished speaking, Zhang Han raised his eyebrows slightly and grabbed the box as he stared at Ui with a playful smile. Old guy, you are indeed weird. Because he had just mentioned the two words, building base. It was clear that Ui knew something about the mysterious world and he actually surpassed the Grandmaster early stage. However, by virtue of Zhang Han's current soul sense, he could not make out how powerful his strength was. Besides that, he was not really interested in this mysterious old man. Look, if I don't guess wrong, you are about to reach the middle stage. This treasure can help you break through, Ui said with a smile. As Zhang Han flicked his finger, the box as big as a palm opened. This small box was decorated with jade inside, which was loaded with a glittery liquid, like quicksilver, containing tremendous energy as powerful as the ocean. It is a holy object called spiritual marrow, whose quantity is almost as large as that of 100 crystal stones. It can support you to cultivate for a long time. Ui shook his head and said, a holy object? Zhang Han chuckled and said, since you mentioned the building base, don't you know that it is a fourth stage spirit treasure? Ui's expression suddenly froze. He stopped smiling and sized up Zhang Han in surprise, showing his amazement in his gaze. Do you think it just assists martial artists to cultivate? This is the most ridiculous joke I have ever heard. Zhang Han's eyes narrowed. Do you rely on your seniority to trick me? Ui continued by saying, this spiritual marrow in such a large quantity is close to a fifth stage spirit treasure, whose most significant role is to form crystal stone mines together with spirit water. And such a huge quantity is enough to nourish nearly 10,000 crystal stones, but you actually asked me to use it to cultivate directly? Zhang Han shook his head slightly and sighed. I thought I might encounter a connoisseur, but now I realize that you are just a dabbler. Ui was a little startled. Ha ha ha. He suddenly burst into laughter and said while shaking his head, I thought that Emperor King was the most formidable talent in the last 40 years, but I did not think that you cut a figure. Interesting, interesting. Just get to the point. Zhang Han put on a solemn face and said politely, Chief, please tell me the news about my parents. The reason why he said that was because he hated to see that he always smiled and relied on his seniority. According to what Ui said, he was acquainted with his father and his father gave the spiritual marrow to him, and besides, Ui handed it over to him. The few things showed that he was on speaking terms with his father and he was an upright man. Of course, he did that due to their good terms, otherwise, he would not have given him the spirit treasure, which was almost at the fifth stage. Alas, Ui suddenly sighed and said, by virtue of your current strength, you are also qualified to know something. After saying that, Ui looked at the top of the mountain with a trace of playfulness flashing through his eyes. Zhang Han waited for a few seconds. Seeing that he was still putting on airs, he was a little speechless and responded, what is it? Alas, Ui sighed again and said, in fact, I have no idea. Whoosh. After finishing his words, he did not give Zhang Han the opportunity to open his mouth, but moved quickly toward the mountain. Zhang Han frowned. When he was going to catch up to him, Ui said something important. "You are a very good boy, so I may as well tell you. Your parents are in the Kungzu world, which is in turbulence. Since its entrance is closed, no one can get in or out of it. So, if you want to find your parents, you have to wait for the entrance to open. It will take half a year to a year. Before that, you'd better seriously improve your strength. Your parents are safe for the time being, so you don't need to worry too much. There is no need for me to say more, for you will naturally know in the future." Ha ha ha. With a last laugh, Ui disappeared into the jungle. Zhang Han also gave up pursuing him. After thinking about what Ui said for a while, he let out a sigh of relief. Obviously, the Kungzu world was a small world, which was in turmoil and whose entrance was closed. Only after the turmoil came to an end would the entrance open again. All this information did not matter. What was important was that his parents were safe. This was good news. The small world. Zhang Han shook his head slightly. If he possessed innate strength, he could cast about for a way to enter the small world. However, obviously, he failed now. Even if he directly absorbed this spiritual marrow, he only could be promoted to the middle stage of the building base, which was totally futile. Less than 1 year. Zhang Han stopped frowning because his family could be reunited then. By that time, his parents were bound to go into rapture once they saw their lovely granddaughter, Meng Meng. Zhang Han chuckled at the thought of that. This journey to Xihang had not been in vain. He was not suspicious of what Ui said because any person in this world who knew about the building base was clearly not weak. Moreover, it meant a lot since he gave the spiritual marrow to him directly, and his following words had an obvious note of warning. Your parents are temporarily safe, but they are indeed getting into trouble. You are not powerful enough now. If the Thunder Yang tree can bear Thunder Yang wood within a year and I succeed in entering innateness, all the problems can be solved. He's truly a funny old man. Zhang Han finally glanced at the top of the mountain and then turned to leave. He returned to the lobby of the old temple. Hey, where is our chief? The first elder glanced around and asked with curiosity. He slipped away, Zhang Han replied. Slipped away? Alas, the chief is going to wander the whole world again. The second elder sighed. How's the matter going? Wang Ming got close to him and asked. It has been handled. Zhang Han nodded. Let's go back now. Wang Ming took the lead walking back to the car, heading straight for the restaurant that Rong Jiaxin has recommended near Westlake. At that point, they were already sitting in a private room. Seeing Zhang Han and Wang Ming coming back, they asked the waiter to serve the dishes. How's it going? Do you get any news? Xian asked Zhang Han beside him with concern. At that moment, Rong Jiaxin and the other people present also looked over. Everyone knew the reason for this trip, therefore, they prayed to get good news. Under everyone's gaze, Zhang Han smiled and said, It's good news that I can pick up my parents in half a year to a year. Great. Xian smiled heartily. Her heart had almost gone to her mouth just now. That eases my mind. Rong Jiaxin let out a long sigh of relief and said, We should have a nice reunion after they come back. After learning this piece of news, the atmosphere of the room became more active in an instant. Meng Meng was sitting between Zhang Han and Xian and looked around. Eventually, she looked at Zhang Han and asked, Papa, are Grandma and Grandpa coming back soon? Yeah, but it will take a while. Will they like Meng Meng? Of course, they will like Meng Meng very much. Zhang Han held Meng Meng in his arms and kissed her with a smile. Will they buy snacks for Meng Meng? Meng Meng asked while blinking big, clear eyes. They will buy you a lot of snacks. So, will they take Meng Meng out to play? Yes. After Meng Meng asked for 1 minute, the little gal's eyes were imbued with expectation, and she said with a chuckle, In that case, I like Grandpa and Grandma. I will wait for them to come back and play with Meng Meng. Her innocent words gave rise to bursts of laughter. While they were chatting with each other, the waiters began to serve the dishes in succession. because it was a fish restaurant. The dishes made with fish were the majority. In general, fish have a lot of bones, and children at the same age as Meng could learn to spit them out by themselves. However, many parents worry if the fish bones would stick in their kid's throat, and it would be really painful if they failed to swallow them or spit them out. Should Meng learn to spit the bones out herself? Zhang Han said, no. Zhang Han gave Meng a piece of fish, then moved his finger slightly. At that moment, all the bones of this piece of fish broke out, which stunned everyone at the table. Then he gave a large piece of fish to Xian. As he shook his finger again, the fish bones were removed. Well, is it so convenient to eat fish? Brother, remove the fish bones for me. Brother-in-law, I also want you to do it for me. Brother-in-law, you are so awesome, why don't you drive all the fish bones of these fish away? Everyone looked at Zhang Han with expectation. Even Xian and Meng were staring at him. Under everyone's gaze, Zhang Han chuckled and shook his head. No, I only serve Xian and Meng. Huh? Meng was stunned for a while, then said while waving her hand, Papa just does it for Mama and me, you don't have a chance to enjoy his service. Ha ha. Xian burst out laughing. Zhang Han seldom played such jokes at normal times, therefore, he was obviously in a really good mood today. However, she glanced at Meng and realized that possessing what others did not have sometimes also fulfilled her. HMPH, I'll serve myself. Zhang Li snorted and continued to eat. In the meantime, in the martial arts world of Xihang, a piece of breaking news spread quickly like a hurricane. At 9 o'clock the next morning, the Wang family and the mystical fog sect were going to fight with their formations to win access to Mount Cyan Fog. After learning of piece of news, everyone in the martial arts world went crazy. The news was like a boulder that was thrown into calm water, making ripples. Various arguments were heard from all over Xihang. The Wang family, the mystical fog sect, are you kidding? Does the Wang family court death? It's like an egg hitting a stone. Even 10 Wang families are not a patch on the mystical fog sect, let alone one. They truly court death. Decadent as the Wang family is, how dare they fight against the mystical fog sect? Most of the people who made such remarks were young cultivators, while the martial artists of the older generation made their own remarks. The hostility of the Wang family toward Chief Xiang Kishan, passed down from the former older master. I'm afraid that their resentment will end with the defeat of the Wang family. That's right. The Wang family is not the grand family that it used to be. I think it will become a common family within 2 generations. Mount Cyan Fog, the place for the Wang family to offer sacrifices to ancestors. Therefore, the mystical fog sect owes the Wang family nothing because they give them a chance to compete. The evaluation of the older generation made many people find out that the Wang family and the mystical fog sect were derived from the same sect in the early years, and had a grudge against each other for centuries. However, then an insider said, the cause of this dispute is mainly because of Shikan's hostility. Somehow, Shikan and Wang Zanping hate each other. I heard that Shi Danlai, a disciple of the Shi family, was killed in the Wang family. According to Shikan's temperament, he will not give in to the Wang family. I know the details. Shi Danlai was not killed by a disciple of the Wang family, but by a foreign Wu Dao grandmaster. Shi Danlai was so arrogant since he returned to the Shi family, so he must have had a conflict with the master. As grandmasters cannot be insulted, his death is reasonable. Another powerful man came here, but it is a pity that they will fight with formations tomorrow rather than the strength of martial arts. It seems that there will be an amazing fierce battle tomorrow. Moreover, it is rumored that Shikan's formation is quite fierce, so I wonder if Wang Zanping can fend it off. Chapter 407. How can you stop me? After lunch, they went around Westlake. There were quite a lot of scenic spots near Westlake. Every time they arrived at one site, Rong Jiaxin would tell Meng a story. Xian was really glad to see that she did that. Meng Meng was almost 4 years old and had already been able to remember things, so going sightseeing more often was conducive to her growth. After going around for a whole afternoon, they returned to the house of the Wang family. After having dinner, Zhang Han and Wang Zanping went to the pavilion outside again. Zhang Han took a sip of tea and asked, "Do you know of the Kungzu world?" "The Kungzu world? Yes." Wang Zanping froze for a while, as if he was recalling something. Then he said, "That is the biggest worldlet in the Central Plains. I heard that few people live there and there are fewer people who know how to enter the world. Moreover, it is rumored that the Kungzu world was in turbulence 5 years ago, thus the entrance was closed. Some senior masters said that it wouldn't open until about 6 years later. I also heard that there was a large number of masters there, some of whom were real talents. Every time one talent is born, the world would change a lot." At that time, Wang Zanping sighed and said, "It will take around a year for the entrance to open, and I'm afraid that a lot of people will come out of the world. By that time, Emperor King's position will be controversial even though he is regarded as the strongest talent now, and a bloody revolution will come to the martial arts world." "Oh." Zhang Han nodded. Presumably, the Kungzu world was an affiliated space, where there was a variety of grand masters, which meant that it was a good place for cultivating with its strong spiritual chi of heaven and earth. Affiliated worlds were not rare, for they even included some cultivators' abodes, but obviously, the Kungzu world was not small. Zhang Han talked with Wang Zanping for a moment, then they came back to the dining hall, after everyone finished dinner. They returned to Wang Ming's house. Everyone played with toys with Meng Meng until 8 o'clock, when someone asked Wang Ming to attend a meeting. Meng Meng put down the toys and asked, "Papa, when will we go back? I miss Big Hai Hai and Little Hai, as well as Yihan." "Let's go back tomorrow afternoon," Zhang Han said with a smile. "Huh? Why so urgent? You can stay here for another few days." Rong Jiaxin's face changed. "That's right." Wang echoed, "You've only stayed here for 2 days, why don't you stay for a few more days if you are free?" At that moment, Xian twisted her mouth without saying anything. She looked at Zhang Han as she blinked her big eyes, like an obedient young wife. Zhang Han shook his head slightly and said, "Maybe next time, it will be more convenient for us to travel if I buy 2 private planes." Both Meng Meng and Xian were used to enjoying the dishes made from the ingredients from the mountain. Although the specialties here were also good, they had a worse taste. Since Xian and Meng Meng ate less, Zhang Han planned to go back sooner. Private planes. Wang Ya's mouth trembled slightly. The price of private jets vary. She read a piece of news not long ago that the most luxurious private jet in the world cost nearly $1 billion. Whose owner spent nearly $20 million on modifications. How affluent that person was. Those somewhat luxurious ones also cost several $1 million each, and a whopping price should be paid to maintain the cheaper ones. My cousin is so rich. Huh, that's okay. Rong Jiaxin shook her head slightly and did not say anything more. Let's go to Mount Cyan Fog tomorrow, and we will leave in the afternoon after handing this matter, Zhang Han said. By the way, Rong Jiaxin's face changed and she asked, "Did you perform the formation that day?" "Yes." "How do you know formations?" Rong Jiaxin became even more curious. She did not make out which formation it was since she knew little about formations, but she was aware that it took a period of time to make a formation. Therefore, she had felt really weird when she had seen Zhang Han only wave his hand before making the formation. After thinking for a while, Zhang Han gave a response, "Yes, but I'm not the most proficient at making formations." Indeed, Zhang Han was not best at making formations. When it came to branches, Zhang Han was more proficient in making elixirs than making formations. As for other skills like refining tools, Zhang Han barely knew anything about them. However, even if all the formation cultivators gathered together, they knew far less about those mysterious skills than Zhang Han did. Oh, I see. Rong Jiaxin smiled and said, Han, you are really awesome, with hard-won credit. Ha! Meng put down her toys and looked up at Rong Jiaxin, then muttered, my papa is the best. That's right, your papa is the most formidable man, Rong Jiaxin said with a smile. At nearly 10 o'clock, they stopped chatting and all returned to their rooms respectively. The next day, Zhang Han and the others got up, then had breakfast at 7:30. After that, they took a short break and got into the motorhome at 8:10. The mystical fog sect was located in a northern suburb, about 1 hour's drive from the house. Since there was no road there, they could not enter it by car. However, they did not plan to go to the mystical fog sect but the nearby Mount Cyan Fog this time. Mount Cyan Fog, as one of their destinations, was famous for the enveloping thin fog all year round. Although the mountain was only over 40 meters above sea level, its area stretched out far. The place where the Wang family sacrificed to their ancestors was located on top of the mountain. That place was in the possession of the Wang family for making sacrifices, but the mystical fog sect wanted to grab it, as was known to all. The holy relic, mountains and rivers flag, was likely to be buried there. Since the mystical fog sect was the most powerful sect in Xihang, no one dared to snatch this treasure even though they knew the holy relic possibly was there. Because this treasure originally was in the possession of the ancestors of the Wang family. Moreover, it was just a toy for those who did not know how to make formations. Although they did not intend to grab it, they still wanted to take a look. When they arrived at the foot of Mount Cyan Fog, Meng blinked her big, clear eyes, looking out of the window, and asked with curiosity, Papa, look, there are so many people as well as cars. Well, they are all here to have fun. Zhang Han smiled and answered. He glanced over, finding that about 200 to 300 cars were parked down the mountain, while the people were in greater numbers, who were chatting in groups. However, the road was not blocked, and a space within a 100-meter radius was available at the foot of the mountain. Led by Shi Kun, plenty of disciples of the mystical fog sect were standing on one side of the vacant lot, while many disciples of the Shi family were standing on the other side. Under everyone's gaze, a motorcade representing the Wang family slowly came into view. At that time, lots of comments were heard. Here they are, here they are. It seems that all the people of the Wang family show up today. If the Wang family is defeated this time, it will be trampled like a fish on a chopping block. Ha, but how can the man match the mystical fog sect? It seems that the centuries-long resentment will come to an end today. There were as many as 2,000 to 3,000 people present, most of whom were martial artists. This competition was really like a grand gathering. However, most of them were obvious strength masters and inward strength masters, while few were chi strength masters, let alone Wu Dao grandmasters. Although only 5 Wu Dao grandmasters showed up, their presence caused a furor. Among them, 3 were from the Wang family, which could be counted as a powerful martial arts clan in Xihang. However, among the strong people, there were some still stronger, so no one thought that the Wang family would win. Bang, bang, bang. Accompanied by a blast of sound of the opening and closing of doors, all the people representing the Wang family got out of the cars and walked to another side of the vacant lot. Both Wang Ming and Wang Zhang were carrying some boxes, in which was stored some jade for making formations and various treasures to enhance the formation's power as formation cores. This time, seeing all the people of the Wang family standing still, Shi Kun said in a loud voice, which could be heard by everyone, the purpose of this formation battle is to decide the possession of Mount Cyan Fog. Mount Cyan Fog originally belonged to our mystical fog sect, but it is also used by the Wang family for making sacrifices to their ancestors. Therefore, our mystical fog sect gave the Wang family an opportunity to grab this land. I, Xiang Qishan, the chief of the mystical fog sect, promise that we will abide by the rules whether we win or lose. After hearing his words, everyone from the Wang family frowned, What they wanted was the place where the Wangs sacrificed to the ancestors rather than Mount Cyan Fog. Besides, this place was originally in the possession of the Wang family. It was the mystical Fog sect that stole their territory. You can't have your cake and eat it too. Many people of the Wang family commented in anger. But then, Shi Kun added, according to the previous rules, each party should send 10 people to join the battle, and the party which wins more rounds will achieve victory. However, considering the decadence of the Wang family, we only need to send 5 people, adopting the Wheel War. As long as a man finally defeats all his opponents, his party will win. I have negotiated the rules with Wang Zanping. Therefore, our first fighter is a young disciple of our sect, named Lu Crossing. As soon as he finished speaking, a lot of people, who surrounded themselves in a semicircle at a distance, began to go into an uproar. Lu Xing is an outstanding disciple of the younger generation in the mystical Fog sect. Yes, he is a heaven stage master, whose formation is very cruel. The Wang family seems to have only cultivated Wang Ming among the younger generation. It must be Wang Ming. Wang Zanping and Wang Zanhong are proficient in formations, while Wang Zanzong knows little about them. However, the Wang family will be too shameful if they ask the 2 seniors to accept the challenge directly. Sure enough, amid the din, Wang Zanping waved his hand and said, Xiaming, accept the challenge first. Well. Wang Ming nodded and walked 20 meters forward, while he and Lu Xing looked at each other. Make your formation first. Lu Xing, in a blue shirt, stood with his hands clasped behind his back, speaking in a scornful tone. Fine. Wang Ming hardened his eyes and walked to a 2-meter-high stone platform. The jade and treasures he brought were already in the 2 boxes. This battle is called Mysterious Race. If you can break the formation within 3 minutes, you will win. Will it take me 3 minutes to defeat you? Lu Xing sneered. After hearing what he said, Shi Kun put on a satisfied look. Of course, they should despise and repress the Wang family ruthlessly. Wang Ming's face became icy. He stretched out his hand to hold the jade and threw them out in succession. Gradually, a strange pattern appeared on the ground. As he held palm-sized genuine chi and put forth his strength, the formation flag fell into the formation, making all the jade around him disappear with a thin rippling mist. I will break your formation in 30 seconds. Lu Xing laughed wildly and then moved, going into the formation. His figure disappeared amid the mist. The instant he entered the formation, everyone present could not help timing it in their mind. 1 second, 2 seconds, 10 seconds. At that point, Zhang Han, Zhang Li, Ziyan, Zif, Meng, and Wang Ya were all in the motorhome 20 meters behind the people of the Wang family. They did not get out of the vehicle to watch the battle. In fact, Zhang Han went over with them because he was cautious. Only by staying with them could he guarantee their safety. After discussing it with Ziyan, he decided to keep Meng away from cultivation when she was so young. Therefore, he did not intend to take her to watch the battle, so they stayed in the motorhome. As for Zhang Han, after learning that the juniors of the 2 parties would fight each other first in accordance with the rules, he lost interest to get out of the car. By occasionally probing what was happening with his soul sense, he knew that Wang Ming's formation was likely to be broken soon. There were too many flaws in his formation, including 3 big ones as well as 24 small ones. If Wang Ming knew what Zhang Han was thinking, he would certainly be stunned. He had considered it to be a very profound formation, but why did it have so many flaws? Under many people's gazes, 23 seconds. 25 seconds. 25 seconds later, laughter was heard from the formation, then Lu Xing's figure appeared. Just so. Lu Xing said as he walked on his stone stage. He added while making the formation, I'll show you what a real formation is. This formation is called 3 hidden, and I will acknowledge defeat if you can hold on for 10 seconds. His words not only made some others sigh with emotion, but also depressed the people of the Wang family, especially Wang Ming. He kept wondering what flaws did the formation he had just made have. In less than a minute, Lu Xing already made his formation before Wang Ming got the answer. Within 5 seconds after he entered the formation, he flew out of it backward. Catching sight of him, Wang Zanping moved and picked him up. Wang Ming's face had completely turned pale, and he suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood. At that moment, his breath was barely perceptible since he had suffered some internal injuries. "Ha ha, you're vulnerable." Lu Xing sneered and returned to his camp, receiving a blast of cheers. Shi Kun put on a satisfied look and said, "Lu Xing, from my mystical fog sect, wins the first round. As for the second round, I will send." 5 minutes later, more people chatted with each other, most of whom were saying, "The mystical fog sect is so formidable." Shi Kun gave a wide smile. "Peng'an, from my mystical fog sect, wins the second round. Lian Minghai, from my mystical fog sect, wins the third round. We've defeated 3 of your disciples. The younger generation of the Wang family is so weak, maybe they don't even know what a formation is. How ignorant and ridiculous. I, Shi Kun, will enter the field in person in the 4th round." Shi Kun's eyes were filled with coldness, and he moved 20 meters in an instant to stand on the stone stage, looking at the people of the Wang family disdainfully. There were still 2 elders in the Wang family's camp, so the reason why he took part in the 4th round was to defeat the 2 of them on his own. "I'll accept the challenge." Wang Zanhong put on a cold face and was about to move. At that point, Wang Zanping reached out his hand to stop him. He moved and stepped onto the stone platform. "Wang Zanping, we don't need to break the others' formation. We may as well make formations directly to fight against each other," Shi Kun said coldly as his eyes were imbued with homicidal intent. "Okay." Wang Zanping responded. As the 2 of them held out their palms, a large number of jade immediately flew to the ground and spread out. They made their formations respectively. Shi Kun made a psychedelic killing formation, while Wang Zanping made a protective formation. Seeing that Shi Kun's formation was about to take shape, Wang Zanping was inadvertently in a cold sweat. His face stiffened with worry. Judging from the power of the formation, he would fail to resist it once it took shape. Shi Kun's face has been shrouded in a hint of killing intent, and he only waited for the formation coming into being. At that moment, Zhang Han shook his head slightly inside the motorhome. Actually, only killing formation could resist Shi Kun's formation. Now that Wang Zanping chose to make a protective formation, he was bound to be defeated. "However, I'll go out. You can wait here for a while." Zhang Han got up and walked to the door. "I want to go with you, Meng Meng. Wait a while, Papa and Mama will come back soon," Xian said to Meng Meng, then left the vehicle with Zhang Han. She knew Zhang Han's origin and desired to blend in with him, so she planned to watch more battles between martial artists. Moreover, she did not worry about Zhang Han, because he was invincible in her mind. She said, "My husband is an immortal." Zhang Han held Xian's hand and gently pinched it, then put his arm around her waist and walked toward the people of the Wang family. At that time, the 2 formations were about to take shape and Wang Zanping heard what Zhang Han said. Kaionsen Kanba position. Lishadzan position. Dongwu Qingshan position. He said 5 positions in succession. After Wang Zanping heard his words, his face changed. He looked over and waved his hand without any hesitation, shooting out 5 first-stage spirit treasures that would be used as the formation core. Poof! In a flash, Wang Zanping's protective formation emitted 5 energy pillars, rushing to 5 directions, making the wind blow wildly. Suddenly, a loud sound, like a fart, was heard. Shi Kun's killing formation dissipated gradually like a punctured balloon. This scene stunned many people behind. "What the hell is it? Much thunder but little rain?" Shi Kun was dumbfounded at that point. He could not believe that his formation was broken by another man so easily. What happened? How's that possible? It is that man. It is he who reminded Wang Zanping. Damn it, how detestable he is. A fury rose from Shikan's eyes, and he said with strong homicidal intent, "How dare you play tricks? Why don't you cherish the chance our mystical fog sect gave to you? Okay, fine, you can stay here." 7 Ghosts King Killing Formation, start. With Shikan's fierce shout, he took out a black stone from his bosom and flung it into the ground in the middle. Kaboom! Suddenly, people felt the ground around their feet vibrate. Then within the vacant lot, wisps of light black fog spread. They surrounded the Wangs and the Wang's motorcade. Obviously, this was a premeditated formation, and Shikan already had an idea to kill them all here. A brisk gale was blowing, and an utter dreary cry could be faintly heard. The faces of the Wu Dao Grandmasters present all changed at that moment, because they could see 7 ghosts floating quickly around the formation. They knew that this was an extremely vicious and ruthless killing formation. Is he going to destroy the Wang family? Many people lost their voices in horror. Just then, an indifferent sneer was heard. "How dare you show such an infamous formation in front of me?" In the formation, the Wang's faces all turned pale. Even Xian was a little scared because she caught sight of the 7 ghosts. The next moment, Zhang Han's words attracted their attention. Zhang Han's eyes lit up. As he raised his hand, nearly 100 pieces of jade rose from the box, which were intertwined with each other and glowing. Boom! Zhang Han clenched his fist all of a sudden. All the jade exploded and turned into a profound formation, accompanied by the spiritual force rushing out of Zhang Han's body. It flew to shoot a bulge in the same shape as a tomb on one side. Why did he shoot there? Wang Zanping and others were confused. Boom! With a loud noise, the bulge fell apart and a lot of energy poured into it. Then, everyone felt that layers of ripples covered the whole formation. The next moment, the formation moved horizontally and immediately surrounded the people of the mystical fog sect as well as the Shi family. 5 of the 7 ghosts were going to attack Shikan. As for the other 2, accompanied by a lot of energy, one of them was aimed at the disciples of the mystical fog sect, while the other was targeting the disciples of the Shi family. This is impossible. Shikan's fingers kept moving, trying to control the formation, but he found that the formation was totally disconnected from him. Looking at the 5 ghosts approaching him and remembering the power of the formation, he was as pale as death. How's that possible? At that point, a loud and stern shout was heard from the top of Mount Cyan Fog. Stop! A figure quickly moved from the top of the mountain, but he was too late after all. The 5 ghosts invaded Shikan's body with an irresistible force, and his face turned green and black alternately all of a sudden. In the meantime, his eyes were bloodshot and he felt his soul being devoured. He realized that he was going to die. He fixed his eyes on Zhang Han and stretched out his right hand, seemingly to say something, but he failed to open his mouth. As for the other 2 ghosts, when they were about to slaughter, the figure approached them and took out a palm-sized wooden box. With a brown light flashing, the 2 ghosts were sucked into it. However, the ghost's energy made the disciples of the mystical fog sect and the Shi family fall to the ground several meters backward. Many people were seriously injured. The energy of the formation dissipated gradually. The old man with brown hair put on an extremely ghastly look. He slowly turned his head and said coldly while staring at Zhang Han, "Why are you so ruthless? Do you know that these people would have been killed by you if I came here 1 second later?" Swish, swish, swish. Everyone present looked at Zhang Han with shocked expressions. Where does this powerful master come from? Under everyone's gaze, Zhang Han kept calm. He looked at the old man calmly and said, "I kill them if I want. How can you stop me?" Chapter 408, Complete Victory. As soon as he said that, the audience burst into an uproar and all the people who were watching from afar were stunned. Shikan is dead. How did Shikan die? He seemed to be counterattacked by his own formation. Hiss, who is that person? How could he have such supernatural power? Oh my god, this is really a shocking battle. But the leader of mystical fog sect, Xiang Qishan, is here. What will he do? Look at him. Obviously he's not afraid of Xiang Qishan. Where on earth does this powerful man come from? Most of the people didn't know what happened, and only a few people spoke a word after seeing that backfire. The formation backfired and Shikan died from that, which made them feel incredulous. However, very few of the Wudao Grandmasters' faces darkened after they saw that. It's true that the formation backfired, but it was caused by that young Grandmaster. Who on earth is he? The question came to their minds. At the same time, they were also shocked by the young man. His moves were extremely decisive. If Xiang Qishan didn't arrive in time, many disciples of their Shi family and the mystical fog sect would have died. But they also understood his behavior. They clearly saw that the formation that Shikan used had been set up earlier and his purpose was self-evident. He had planned to kill his opponent, but was killed in the end, which only showed that he was not as powerful as his opponent. It's just this Wudao Grandmaster who is more powerful than Shikan is still so young. Who on earth is he? If they had not been fortunate enough to have seen Emperor King before, they would suspect that this man was him. After hearing Zhang Han's words, everyone in the Wang family was moved and their eyes were filled with excitement. Our Wang family hasn't taken such a strong stance for so many years. Although he isn't our direct relative, he, a distant relative, still belongs to our family. However, Xiang Qishan's face darkened. He faintly heard many people criticizing Shikan's behavior and he also saw many people pointing in his direction while talking. So, Xiang Qishan raised his eyebrows and said something angrily, which spread throughout Mount Cyan fog. Shikan set up the formation in advance and was killed because he was not capable. I have nothing to say about that, but you. Xiang Qishan suddenly looked at Zhang Han, saying, "You're ruthless, you tried to kill the disciples of the mystical fog sect and Shi family. I can't turn a blind eye to that." Oh? Zhang Han raised his eyebrows and said, "What do you want to do?" He faintly felt that Xiang Qishan was very powerful and seemed not far from the peak of Grandmaster. Qishan couldn't even hold a candle to him. However, isn't it more fun to deal with some powerful people? Under everyone's attention, Xiang Qishan suddenly took a few steps forward and advanced more than 20 meters. He stood on the stone platform and looked at Zhang Han while saying, "The formation competition still needs one person. I, Xiang Qishan from the mystical fog sect, will fight you." Upon hearing that, many people were shocked. He'll continue to compete. Xiang Qishan has his principles. He's giving the Wang family another chance. Leader Xiang will fight personally. It will really be an eye-opener today. I haven't seen Xiang Qishan fight in person in a few years. This trip is worth it. I hope that the Wang family won't lose so fast, otherwise, the fight won't be exciting at all. Formation? A strange smile appeared around Zhang Han's mouth. He looked at Xian and said, "Wait a little while, after I get rid of him, we can go back." Xian licked her lips and said, "Then you have to be careful. Don't worry, it's a piece of cake." Zhang Han chuckled and reached out his right hand to tidy Xian's hair on her forehead, which had gotten a little messed up by the wind. Many people present were confused. A lot of martial artists who were above the level of Chi Strength Master all heard his words. There were several words in their minds. A little while. Get rid of him. It's a piece of cake. Did I mishear? There was a look of surprise in many people's eyes. The mystical fog sect is a well-known martial arts sect. Their leader, Xiang Qishan, is also a Grand Master, who majors in formation and is influential in Xihang. However, in his eyes, such a strong person looks like one who can be defeated easily. Even Wang Zanping, Wang Ming, and the others were all looking at Zhang Han with confusion. Is he also a martial artist who majors in formations? Xiang Qishan's look showed that he was angry. He couldn't stand being looked down upon by others in his professional field. So, he looked at Zhang Han indifferently. After he moved his body and arrived at the stone platform, he said coldly, "Let's start." After saying that, He lifted his arms and a lot of jade floated up from the box next to him. It looked like there were about 500 pieces. At the same time, the flags were also spread out. It was windless, but the flags were still moving. Then, Xuanhuan waved his palms and all the jade smashed on the ground. The formation was created very fast. It moved forward and the flags were inserted in many places, forming many mysterious patterns. Wang Zanping's facial expression changed after he saw that. What a powerful formation. Thousands of spectators around them felt that their eyes blur. Looking at the formation, they felt as if it could move and change into various patterns, while the powerful and sometimes violent energy was spreading like a hurricane. Among them, several Wu Dao grandmasters were amazed. Grandmaster Xiang deserves his reputation. This is both offense and defense. It's superb. I wonder how his opponent will defend himself. Why doesn't he move? If he doesn't fight back now, he won't have a chance. Many people were attracted by Xuanhuan's formation, but a few people saw that the man on the opposite stone platform was still standing there silently, not moving. Is it that he's given up? Even Xuanhuan looked at him strangely. Ha ha ha. He shook his head while laughing, and said firmly, "Don't think about running away, because if you escape, the formation's power will go after the people behind you. This is called the Four Symbols Formation. I learned the pattern from an ancient book and spent 30 years to comprehend it. It integrates the four spirits: azure dragon, rose finch, white tiger, and tortoise. I once used it to kill 3 martial artists who were middle-stage grandmasters. This is a truly integrated formation that I've learned till now. You should feel honored to witness its power for the first time." Xuanhuan's words shocked all the people present. One of the Grandmaster Strongs almost lost his voice. It's the Four Symbols Formation, and it's completely integrated. The formation has been set up. If leader Xiang really wants to kill them, all the people from the Wang family will be in extreme danger. After hearing his words, everyone around him gasped in astonishment. A formation could contain such great power. Oh no! Wang Zanping's and other people's faces turned pale in an instant, and their bodies trembled. They also heard about this formation's power before. At the same time, they also felt that they were frozen by some energy. Just when Wang Zanping was extremely anxious, Zhang Han, who was standing on the stone platform, opened his mouth. Does that deserve to be called the Four Symbols Formation? Xuanhuan frowned and said, "Young man, don't be so arrogant. If you irritate me, I won't give you any chance to live. You look down on my formation, right? Then, let me show you the tip of the iceberg. Spirit of Azure Dragon, out." Buzz. Suddenly, the jade exploded one by one on the left side of his formation, accompanied by a thunderous sound, and a fierce gale sprang up. The invisible energy gathered together. Because the dust had been blown away by the gale, people could clearly see a 10-meter dragon rising on the left. That thunderous sound was obviously the dragon's roar. No wonder Grandmaster Xiang is well known in Xiang. This formation is powerful. It's so scary. Many people looked at it with full attention, even without blinking their eyes, and such a thought arose in their minds. Those of the Wang family gradually became disappointed, especially Wang Ming. Looking at the scene on the field, he realized that the formations he knew were only superficial. A bit of worry even flashed through Xian's eyes. Zhang Han seemed to have felt that and then turned to look at her. A confident and gentle smile appeared on his face. Xian felt relieved immediately and responded with a smile. She knew what Zhang Han's look meant. "Don't be afraid, your husband will deal with him." She believed that firmly. Just when other people felt surprised, Zhang Han suddenly moved his hands. He stretched out his hands to one side and lifted them up. In an instant, all the jade flew from the box on the stone platform and then fell to the ground in the front like streams of light. But that was just the beginning. Just when Xuanhuan was about to strike, all the jade in the 2 boxes in front of the Wang family rose up into the air just like raindrops. They hung directly in the air in front of Zhang Han. The four symbols formation can't be used that way. Zhang Han said those words calmly. The next moment, all the jade in front of him exploded and was connected by some slightly visible lines. Suddenly, some mysterious energy was created in that area. What is this? Xiang Qishan's eyes widened and he was shocked. At the next moment, a whirlwind was formed at the energy gathering area. Ow! A beast-like roar was heard before all the jade on the ground exploded, and then all lines formed a formation, which rushed into the whirlwind. Swish! All the martial artists who were above the level of Chi Strength Master clearly saw a giant dragon suddenly rush out from the whirlwind. That roar was obviously its howl. That sound contained its disdain for the blurry dragon shadow tens of meters away. How is that possible? Xiang Qishan's pupils shrank because he couldn't believe it. How can he also master the four symbols formation? How could such a clear dragon shadow come out from his formation? How could his four symbols formation be created so quickly? While he was thinking, the dragon shadow from the opposite side had shredded his own dragon in less than one breath. It seemed that it had only paused for a second before it continued to move in his direction. Oh no, tortoise spirit. Xiang Qishan was greatly shocked and constantly tried to use the formation to defend. However, his defense was of no use. But fortunately, the dragon shadow had lost 70% of its energy. As for the remaining 30%, Xiang Qishan took out a palm-sized wooden box and absorbed all of it. Crack! A lot of cracks appeared from the center of the box, and then it broke. Looking at the cracked wooden box, Xiang Qishan's face was extremely stiff. The functional treasure box is also broken? What the hell is that? Xiang Qishan looked at Zhang Han with confusion. He saw that Zhang Han was still a little regretful. He shook his head slightly, saying, "The jade's quality is too bad. If I doubled the amount, neither of you would leave here alive today." In his view, jade wasn't a good material for setting up formations. The best material was formation stones, and crystal stones took second place. If either of them were used, the formation could instantly devour everyone present. As soon as he said that, the whole audience went silent. In the wilderness, it was so silent that even the sound of a pin dropping could be heard. Many people couldn't believe their eyes. Many people even thought that they were mistaken. The famous formation, Grand Master Xiang Qishan, is defeated by others? Before Wang Zanping and the others had expressed their excitement through their eyes, Xiang Qishan's body swayed. His face was pale from being overwhelmed. After taking a few deep breaths, he looked at Zhang Han and said bitterly, "What formation is that?" However, Zhang Han just glanced at him and then ignored it. He turned directly to Xian. Xiang Qishan closed his eyes and took a deep breath, recalling his formation from before. However, he couldn't think of anything, just like he'd forgotten what had happened a moment ago. It was a very mysterious feeling. Puff. Xiang Qishan suddenly felt very disappointed, saying, "As for this formation competition, the mystical fog sect has lost. The right to use Mount Cyan fog belongs to the Wang family, no one can covet it." After that, he opened his eyes and looked at Wang Zanping, who was very happy. Then, he said unwillingly, "The mountains and rivers flag is a mysterious treasure, which isn't the heirloom of the Wang family. I promise that I won't attack you in half a year, but in the future, I hope you have the ability to guard the mountains and rivers flag." After saying that, he turned and was about to leave. Anyway, losers' words are always just excuses. Even if he was unwilling, he would still accept failure. But when he just moved his body, "If you dare to bully the Wang family again, I will crush your mystical fog sect." Kaboom! Those words were like thunder from the clear sky, which made Xiang Qishan suddenly stop moving, his facial muscles trembling. "Can't you allow me to say anything?" He stopped for 3 seconds, and eventually walked away at a faster speed. People saw that the well-known Xiang Qishan seemed to feel embarrassed as he fled quickly. "Let's go, hurry up. Stop looking, let's go." The disciples of the mystical fog sect left quickly. They knew that since their leader had left, if that powerful man attacked again, all of them would be killed. Therefore, the disciples of the mystical fog sect left quickly, among which there were many disciples of the Shi family. Since they couldn't defeat him, their only option was to run away. Wow! Han, you're amazing. We won. All the people of the Wang family cheered happily. Zhang Han directly took Xian's hand to the motorhome. He said the last sentence in order to frighten them, since he couldn't always stay in Xiang. Distant water couldn't quench present thirst, so he had to make them scared. Even if they attacked again, they wouldn't go too far. Along the way, Xian blinked her big eyes and sometimes peeked at Zhang Han. She didn't know what to say because the scene back there was too shocking. After opening the motorhome's door and going in, they heard Meng Meng's eager voice. "Oh, Papa, Mama, why are you back so late?" Meng Meng was anxious. "Did you go out to have fun secretly?" Meng Meng pouted her small mouth and said. Meng Meng could always make them feel at ease very fast. The shock that Xian felt gradually dissipated, and a soft smile also appeared on Zhang Han's face. He walked over and sat down before holding Meng Meng in his arms and kissing the little girl's cute face. Zhang Han always liked to pluck up evil by the roots, but he thought that a furious fight would make a big noise and disturb Meng Meng. Otherwise, he wouldn't have shown them any mercy. Zhang Han spread out his right palm and said with a smile, "Look what it is, I brought a small gift for you." There was a small wooden horse made of jade on his palm, which looked like a cartoon character and was very cute. "You're so considerate." Xian smiled and glanced at Zhang Han. "When you were fighting with others, you even made such a small gift. It's unbelievable." "Huh?" Meng Meng's eyes lit up. She stretched out her small hand and took the wooden horse, looking very happy. "There's a gift, it's so pretty. Meng Meng likes it. Papa is the best. Mwah, 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 mwah." Looking at Meng Meng's cute behavior, Zhang Li and the others laughed. None of them asked what had happened outside. Because Zhang Han's return represented victory. Let's go back. After Zhang Han said that, some of the cars of the Wang family went back home. In addition to Zhang Han, there were Zhao Feng and others. The people standing on both sides of the road looked at the motorcade in shock. Xiang Qishan lost, and he lost in formations. My God! This is incredible. But I saw it with my own eyes. If the news is spread out, I'm afraid that many people will be astonished. It's terrible, it's awful. This man must have an extraordinary background. Exclamations were given by the crowd, because the battle they witnessed earlier really shocked them. Many of the martial artists with weak strength were amazed, but several Wu Dao grandmasters were even more astonished. When the motorcade was passing by, they even felt that their backs were freezing cold. What kind of martial artist can defeat Xiang Qishan with such ease? Obviously. He's a man with a horrible background. His ability made them feel that he was from a horrible and sacred sect, but they didn't know what it was. Zhang Han could defeat a whole sect by himself. Back then, he defeated 10 superb sects as if he were the king of the world. Those people naturally wouldn't know that. Even Zhang Han himself didn't recall his past very often. Just let bygones be bygones. He preferred his new life at the moment and cherished it more because he had a home. Later, many people looked at the Wang family and saw them go on Mount Cyan Fog. They sighed with emotion. Where did the Wang family find such a powerful man? He defeated Xiang Qishan so easily. That's horrible. However, they didn't know that the Wang family was discussing something on the way to the mountain. Xiang Qishan won't attack us within half a year, but what about things after that? After thinking about it, they decided not to give him the chance to attack and they'd leave. So at noon, an interesting scene happened in the Wang family's house. Zhang Han and the others went back to Rong Jiaxin's house to rest and play with Meng Meng. At noon, Rong Jiaxin and Wang Ming returned with some good news. At the place of worship, in addition to the mountains and rivers flag, there were also the formation maps from 10 ancestors of the Wang family. That was a very valuable inheritance. All the members of the Wang family were delighted. Han, we're going to Hong Kong with you today, Wang Jiaxin said with a smile. We'll stay there for a while, if it's possible. Our old masters will bring some people to settle there later. There are not many people in the Wang family, so it's easy to move there. But we'll discuss it carefully with the old masters, since they've lived here for decades and they're hesitant. So, our family will go there first this time. Han, I wonder if it's convenient for you. They're going to Hong Kong would definitely bother them, so she asked in advance. If it wasn't convenient, they'd go there after a while. Besides, Wang Jiaxin really liked Meng and she wanted to spend a few more days with her. Before Zhang Han could open his mouth, Xian said with a smile, of course it's convenient. We welcome you at any time. Yeah, welcome. Meng pouted her mouth and said, it doesn't matter who's coming, as long as Papa and Mama are with me. Chapter 409, All Martial Artists. It's good that you can taste the dishes made by Zhang Han this time, Xian said with a smile. Xian was also very happy that Wang Jiaxin would go with them because she sincerely wanted to have more contact with her. Wang Jiaxin and Wang Ming were good-tempered. Besides, she would need to see her father-in-law and mother-in-law in the future. Xian was a little nervous about that. Ahem. Just then, Wang Ming walked in from the door and looked at Zhang Han inexplicably. He was shocked by Zhang Han's power. He couldn't understand how a man under 30 could be so strong. Did he begin to practice when he was in his mother's womb? Maybe he's just a talent. He shook his head slowly and drove those thoughts out of his mind. Then, he looked at Wang Jiaxin and asked with a smile, shall we go with Han? Let's go together. Remember to arrange the plane tickets. Wang Jiaxin nodded. Han, Yan, we'll have to trouble you this time, Wang Ming said with a smile. No trouble. Meng interrupted and said seriously, Mama just said it. Welcome. Ha ha ha. Everyone couldn't help laughing. I just talked with the 3 old masters. They don't want to live under the entanglement of the old generation's grudges and also have the idea of moving to Hong Kong. They asked us to go there first to see if there is a suitable place for us. After all, an inch of land has the value of an inch of gold in Hong Kong. The Wang family isn't that rich. After what happened to the worshipping place, a sacrifice hall will also be needed there. So, we'll have to move forward step by step. Han, we. Wang Ming curled up his lips and didn't go on. Although they wanted to move there, they also had the idea of relying on Zhang Han, naturally for the reason that they hoped their family could thrive. After they talked about the battle earlier, Wang Zanping gave his own evaluation. Han's ability is extraordinary. He may have reached the level of the ancestor of sacred ancient sects. After hearing that, all the people in the Wang family gasped in astonishment. The ancestor of sacred ancient sects blasted the mountains and set up various sects, whose power was well known throughout the world. Moreover, many years of grudges and disputes had made them a little tired. So, a lot of family members were tempted by the idea when someone brought it up. In consideration of many aspects, including the concern about the family's prosperity, the old masters of the Wang family ordered Wang Ming and his family to go there first to see if there were any suitable land and enterprises for them. They didn't know that fate had brought a strong support for them. Although Wang Ming didn't finish his words, Zhang Han understood what he meant. He chuckled and nodded while saying, of course you're welcome. I'm very willing to help if there's any problem. Ha ha ha. Wang Ming suddenly felt his good days were coming, so he watched Zhang Han like he was a rare treasure and grinned. Zhang Li, Zif, and Xian felt a bit awkward, looking at his smile. They couldn't help but think of one word, gay. Hey, Dad, why are you smirking? Wang Ya felt embarrassed and quickly reminded him. Ahem, ahem. Wang Ming realized it. He smiled embarrassedly and said, well, Jiaxin, Ya, go to pack your luggage, it's already noon. We're leaving after a short break after the meal and we'll stay there for a long while this time. We probably won't return to Xihang. Okay. Rong Jiaxin and Wang Yan nodded and then went back to the room to pack up their luggage. Wang Ming laughed. Because Rong Jiaxin was there, he naturally wouldn't need to pack up his luggage. Then, he stepped forward to Zhang Han and asked, Han, well, did you see the formation I made today? Yeah, I saw it. Zhang Han nodded. What do you think? Wang Ming looked at him with expectation, as if he were waiting for his praise. However, the reality wasn't as good as he thought. It was quite bad, Zhang Han said bluntly. There were at least 30 flaws, let alone other small mistakes. Besides, even if your formation was complete, it wouldn't be very powerful. Wang Ming was frozen right away because that was a heavy blow for him. Xian felt it very funny and held back her laughter. Then, she glanced at Zhang Han and coughed to remind him. Don't make him lose face. Zhang Han thought about it and decided to say something nice. So, he said, of course, it's not totally useless. Your formation can scare some ordinary people. You can also use it to catch wild chickens or wild ducks. To catch wild chickens? Wang Ming's eyes widened. Oh my! Zhang Li burst into laughter and said, Uncle, don't be discouraged. Although it's not perfect, it's still amazing in our eyes. All right. Wang Ming shook his head helplessly. Before Zhang Han arrived here, he was the most outstanding master of formations among the young generation of the Wang family. He was also a bit self-satisfied, but at that moment, his ability was totally denied. However, he did not care about that because he had a strong interest in formations anyways. After a bitter smile, he looked at Zhang Han and asked in a low voice, well, Han, was that the real four symbols formation when you were fighting Xiang Qishan? It was just a part of it. The jade you brought was not enough and the quality was a bit bad, Zhang Han replied simply. Just a part? How powerful will the full version of the formation be? Wang Ming's eyes lit up. What do you think? Zhang Han did not answer, but asked him, well. Wang Ming rolled his eyes. He felt it would be extremely powerful. Just when he was about to ask, Zhang Han continued speaking. Uncle, you still don't know the superficial knowledge of it. I'll teach you some when we're in Hong Kong. Ah, good, that's great, ha ha ha. Wang Ming smiled from ear to ear. The Wang family's moving to Hong Kong was also what Zhang Han wanted, as his understanding of the martial arts world deepened. He knew that Wu Dao grandmasters were the backbone. With Wang Zanping and his men, it would be safer. Although he himself was more than enough, Zhang Han couldn't allow any accidents to happen. Then, Wang Ming stayed there to accompany him. Xian, Zif, and Zhang Li went back to their rooms to pack up the luggage. After they finished, they put it in one corner of the hall. When they were there, Rong Jiaxin and Wang Yi also went in with their suitcases. They didn't take much luggage. Each one only had a large suitcase. At 1 o'clock, everyone went to have lunch. When they were eating, many young disciples of the Wang family looked at Zhang Han with great adoration. Zhang Han had become their idol in their hearts. After they finished the meal and took a break, the three old masters of the Wang family went to Rong Jiaxin's house personally to see them off. Wang Zanping went forward and opened the football-sized wooden box in his hand. It could be seen that a flag was lying inside quietly. It was as large as a palm, but the flagpole was emerald green and the flag was cyan. Various patterns could be faintly seen, and if one looked at it carefully, he could find condensed mountains and rivers there. This is the mountains and rivers flag. Han, given your achievements in formations, it'll be more useful in your hands. So, today it could be said that Zhang Han was the Wang family's savior. In addition to the mysterious formation he displayed, Wang Zanping came up with that idea. Even if it was not for his own use, he would be very pleased to see the mountains and rivers flag's great power in the future. But before he finished his words, Zhang Han shook his head and said, keep the flag for yourself, I don't need it. Well, the mountains and rivers flag is a holy treasure after all. With it, Your strength will definitely be improved a lot. Wang Zanping was stunned. He didn't know what Zhang Han was thinking. This is a holy treasure. I'm a bit reluctant to give it away. Even Wang Zanzong and Wang Zanhong did not get it. Han, just accept it. We also hope that the mountains and rivers flag can exert its greatest ability. Obviously you're the most suitable person, Wang Zanzong said with a smile. He thought that Zhang Han was too shy to accept it. Wang Ming and the others also looked at Zhang Han at the same time. Although they didn't know much about it, they thought it was obviously a good thing because it was regarded as a holy treasure. Zhang Han found them very interesting. He shook his head with a smile and said, "This thing is of no use to me, but it will be useful to you, keep it." What he was the most proficient at was not formations, while Wang Zanping and the others were specialized in that field. No use. Wang Zanping was stunned. He said, "But it's a holy treasure. It's nothing to me, I have my sacred treasure," Zhang Han responded. According to that definition, the Thunder Yang tree would be a sacred treasure, the spiritual marrow would be a holy treasure, and the Yuan King tree would be a heaven stage treasure. Zhang Han had numerous spiritual treasures, so it was clear to him what kind of thing was useful to him. To put it more plainly, the mountains and rivers flag was not to his liking. If they put the second-order treasure obsidian crystal and the fourth-order treasure mountains and rivers flag together, Zhang Han would still choose the obsidian crystal without hesitation. To make a formation most powerful it had to be set up in advance. The more mysterious the formation was, the greater effort and the more things it would require. If the formation was contained in the mountains and rivers flag, at least half of the energy would be lost. Wang Zanping and the others didn't know about that, but after hearing his words, they were struck dumb with astonishment. Sacred treasure? My God, Han, you really have a scared treasure? This is incredible. Having a sacred treasure is equivalent to having a whole sect. All of them had heard that many big sects became prosperous because they had sacred treasures. That information really shocked them. So, Wang Zanping directly put the mountains and rivers flag away. He's already got a sacred treasure, so forget about this. After they chatted for a while, Zhang Han and his men got in the cars and went to the airport. Wang Zanping and the others escorted them to the gate of the house. Watching the back of the car team, he shook his head and sighed. He's really a talent of this generation. I'm afraid that Emperor King would be no match for him. The Zhang family has a strong backing. Wang Zanhong expressed his feelings. What a pity, the Zhang family has a narrow vision. Wang Zanzong said slowly, I feel that given Han's temperament, he may not admit to being a member of the Zhang family. That's because the new leader of the Zhang family focuses more on business. In the power center, Shangjing, they have gradually reduced their attention to the martial arts world. This is also a drawback of big families. One can't be anxious to achieve quick success and get instant benefits. However, Zhang Guangyu is a hero. With Han there, their generation will surely prosper. Wang Zanping sighed again. He was a little disappointed. He also hoped that there would be a talent in the Wang family, but he was afraid that he'd see no one in his family as powerful as Zhang Han throughout his life. The plane would take off at 3 p.m. and arrive in Hong Kong at 5:30 p.m. It would only take 2 odd hours, which would be rather fast. Before boarding the plane, Zhao Feng informed Xuyong, who was in the restaurant. He told him that they'd arrive at the restaurant at about 6 o'clock and explained the other things. Xuyong replied that Wang Long would prepare a hearty dinner at 6 o'clock. After arranging things properly, he boarded the plane. Meng Meng didn't fall asleep. She looked out of the window and occasionally said in her cute voice, Papa, look, do you think that cloud is like little Hai Hai? There are so many clouds, I can't count them all. Over 2 hours passed quickly. When they arrived in their own land, Zhao Feng and the others felt relaxed a lot. We're finally here, we'll have a good time here this time. Wang Ya stretched herself and smiled. Rong Jiaxin was gratified and smiled after seeing that, thinking that her daughter was about to get over the failed marriage. Seeing that everyone went out of the parking lot, Wang Ming asked, how will we go back? But later, When he walked around the corner and saw the scene in front of him, his mouth trembled slightly. He felt that he had asked a stupid question. Because he saw a line of nearly 20 cars parked on the road in front of him. An extended limited edition Rolls-Royce Phantom was very eye-catching, followed by 2 ordinary Phantoms, and the rest were all Mercedes-Benz. It was a luxury motorcade, but it didn't shock Wang Ming. What surprised him was that near the driving seat of each car stood a man in a suit with white gloves. He looked at them carefully and was shocked. Oh gosh! They're all martial artists. Chapter 410, Sensation. There were 18 people standing next to the car doors, adding in the 3 standing in the front. There were 21 in total. In particular, of the first 3 people, 1 had mastered inward strength and the other 2 were close to that. With so many martial artists, a lot of things could be done at ordinary times. Boss, Madam, Instructor Liu, Xiong, and the others greeted them loudly. Zhang Han nodded slightly. Xian smiled while Meng Meng made some cute sounds, looking very happy. Zhang Han's family and Rong Jiaxin's family got in the extended version Phantoms, while Zuf, Zhang Li, Instructor Liu, and other people got in the other cars. After everyone got in the cars, they slowly drove to New Moon Bay. During that period, many passers-by stopped to watch them while discussing. It's magnificent. Which big shot is in there? Look at those poker-faced bodyguards. They're really awesome with white gloves. That is not an ordinary powerful man. There were several martial artists among them. They looked carefully and suddenly found that the man was the one who had killed He Qingshan in an instant. Hiss. They couldn't help taking a picture of his back from a distance and sending it to their friends. I met the ruthless Master Zhang today. They just got off the plane. Imperceptibly, Zhang Han had become well known and many martial artists had seen him from a distance. They were not deeply impressed by Zhang Han, but Xian, in the martial arts world of Hong Kong, who still didn't know that Xian was Zhang Han Yang's woman. It could be said that in all of Hong Kong, except for the 4 largest families, no one would have the courage to provoke Xian. The 2 events that happened in the Dragon Triumph Club and Strange Peak Island had reflected a lot. After driving for more than half an hour, the cars stopped at the road in front of the restaurant at 6 o'clock. Bang, bang, bang. Zhang Han, Zhao Feng, Zhang Li, and the others got out of the cars. Han, you're really living a leisurely life. Wang Ming looked at the restaurant and smiled. He thought that the restaurant he was running was very luxurious, but it turned out to be a small restaurant with a cozy atmosphere. After seeing that 40 or 50 people were lined up in front of the restaurant, Wang Ming shook his head slightly. Zhang Han had a great reputation as a Wu Dao Grand Master, so many disciples from a lot of families would go there, trying to establish a good relationship with him. He saw clearly that more than half of the people in the queue were well dressed with an extraordinary temperament. Obviously, they were also some powerful people. Many of those people were famous CEOs. That stunned a lot of people who frequented the restaurant. Isn't that Bai Songwu, the president of the Bai Group? Hiss, why did such a big shot come to line up here? Isn't the beautiful woman sitting there Han Zouqing, the chairman of Ye Company? There are so many. Hiss, why are so many powerful people waiting in line? My God, what's going on? Just then, a person who knew about something reminded them in a low voice, keep it down. I heard something from Brother Sunday. You know that all the membership cards here have been sold. Many big shots have come over to buy that, but they're all too late, so they can only line up here like us to eat the ordinary food. Do you know why they came here? Why? HMPH. It's not only because the food here is delicious. The most important reason is that the boss here is awesome. He's a powerful man with a great background. Do you get it? What does that mean? These bosses are already very powerful. Do you need to ask? They definitely cannot be compared with the boss. Alright, I'll tell you some more. More than half of the people lined up here are CEOs or disciples from big families. The man who's cooking there is Master Chef Wang Long. He came to cook for free. Do you know what that means? Also, one membership card here has been speculated to cost 50 million yuan, but I haven't heard who will sell it. The boss is back. Under everybody's attention, the motorcade slowly stopped at the road not far from the door. After they got out, people saw Zhang Han and the others, who had been gone for several days. According to their habits, they would all sit there and greet them with enthusiasm. But as the boss and the others approached, all the CEOs and disciples from various families stood up with respect and said politely, "Hello, Mr. Zhang, Mr. Zhang." A lot of patrons around were surprised. They subconsciously stood up and said hello. "Hi boss." Humans like to follow the crowd subconsciously, therefore, except for a few people who lowered their heads and concentrated on playing with their mobile phones, everyone else stood up and said hello. Huh? Meng was stunned. Looking at the people who were standing there, she was a little confused and held Zhang Han's neck with her arms more tightly. Xian looked around with her big eyes and faintly knew the reason. She felt it a little weird. What's going on? Zhang Li and Zif curled their lips and were confused. They entered the restaurant. The restaurant was very quiet. Few people were talking, and even if they were, they all talked quietly. All the tables for VIP members were occupied. Wang Qiang, Wu Liang, and Wang Juin's family were sitting at a table for 4 people. Wang Yihan was sitting on Wang Juin's lap. Because the host was absent, they could only eat at the restaurant. They were the only ones on the scene who could eat the food for VIP members without a membership card. Xiong knew that they were on good terms with the boss, so he broke the rules for them. At the middle table were Sun Dongying and a tall beautiful woman. At the back, there were Liang Mengkai and her brother, Yu Qingqing, and Zhao Du. At the table on the other side were Linx, Mr. Sheng, his subordinate, and 2 other reserved yet gentle middle-aged men. They were new VIP members of the restaurant. After Zhang Han and the others went in, all the people looked over. Meng, you're back. Wang Yihan shouted while jumping down from Wang Juin's leg and running up to Zhang Han. Wow, Yihan? Meng's big eyes lit up. She was surprised and twisted her little body in Zhang Han's arms. Papa, hurry up, let me go. Zhang Han grinned and put Meng on the ground. The little girl had been able to run and jump on her own for a long time, so she ran over to Wang Yihan quickly. Looking at her running, people felt that the girl seemed to have put on some weight, but she was not obese, she was just a little chubby, looking very cute. Meng, where have you been these days? I came here every day, but didn't see you. Wang Yihan said before hugging Meng. I went to travel with Papa and Mama. We went to Xihang and ate dragon's beard candy. It was so sweet. We also went to an amusement park. The 2 little girls began to talk. Wang Juin and Su Yu also stood up to greet them. Mr. Zhang. Wang Juin smiled. He went there both the previous night and that night, only to find that many people present had a higher social status than him. Besides, everybody was very honest, which had confused him. What's wrong with those big shots? A lot of them are even lining up outside. Lining up in person? They can ask their subordinates to do that for them. Wang Juin was very confused, but he was also very surprised deep inside because he vaguely felt that they seemed to come for Mr. Zhang. Hiss. A second thought incurred profound fear. What kind of person can make these powerful men rush in like this? After seeing Zhang Han and the sensation outside earlier, he confirmed his inner thoughts. I really got to know a top-level powerful man. Let's go upstairs. Zhang Han nodded. Then, the group of people walked to the 2nd floor. When they passed by the kitchen, Wang Long put his hands in front of him and politely nodded and greeted him. Hello, Mr. Zhang. Zhang Han nodded and then took the lead to the 2nd floor. Zhao Feng, Ahu, and Instructor Liu put the suitcases on the 2nd floor, and then left. Rong Jiaxin's family had been watching it all silently during that period. It was a big occasion, but they felt that it should be justified. Even if there was another Wu Dao Grandmaster, he would still be treated like that. Han, this is Wang Jiaxin couldn't help asking when everyone was sitting on the sofa. "They are our friends here." Zhang Han chuckled. Before Zhang Han made the introduction, Wang Jiun stood up. He extended his right hand and said with a smile, "Hello, my name is Wang Jiun, this is my wife, Su Yu, and that is our daughter, Wang Yihan. Oh, hello, I'm Han's aunt." They introduced each other. After learning that the person was Zhang Han's aunt, Wang Jiun began to worry if his family had disturbed Mr. Zhang's family gathering. After thinking about it, he tipped Su Yu a wink. Then, Su Yu called Wang Yihan. "Yihan, your grandfather hasn't finished talking to you yet. Let's go downstairs and check it out, alright?" "No." Wang Yihan just met with Meng Meng again. How could she leave easily? Wang Jiaxin seemed to have seen through their thoughts, so she said with a smile, "Just stay here, look how happy they are." "Yeah, stay here," Meng Meng echoed seriously. So, Wang Jiun and Su Yu nodded smilingly and didn't refuse. While they were talking, Zhao Feng began to serve the dishes. He put them on a round dining table near the window. "Aunt, let's eat first," Xian said with a smile. "Yeah, okay." All the people went to the table and sat down. In less than 5 minutes, many dishes had been served. Zhao Feng and Wang Long, who was dressed in a white chef's uniform, went over with the last 2 dishes of staple food. "Mr. Zhang." Wang Long smiled politely. He served noodles while introducing it to everyone. "This is braised Kailin noodles. It's a traditional dish and was also a famous one in the Royal Nine White banquet before. It's also called stewed noodles with mutton." Wang Long used small bowls to contain the noodles and gave them to everyone respectively. He also introduced the other dishes at the same time. "This is lotus seed porridge made from some of the high-end ingredients I brought, but they are nothing compared to Mr. Zhang's ingredients. This is spicy tendon, which is also one dish in the Royal Nine White banquet. It is good for the skin and improves the growth and development of adolescents." Considering Meng Meng, "I didn't make it very spicy. This is duck's paw with mustard. It has a strong flavor, which is spicy and crisp. This is stewed tofu made from Mr. Zhang's ingredients. The tofu's quality is the best I have ever seen. Mr. Zhang often cooks dishes with cucumbers and shredded potatoes, so I cooked them for the VIP members. I wish everyone a happy meal." After Wang Long introduced it all quickly, he nodded with a smile and then left. "Are all of these made from Han's ingredients?" Wang Ming asked curiously. "Yes," Xian smiled lightly and said, "He rented a mountain nearby. The ingredients are all from there and he also raises a lot of livestock. The scenery there is very beautiful. I'll take you to have a look tomorrow. Also Big Hai Hai and Little Hai Hai are there. There are many, many dogs. They are all there. That's my Xanadu. Papa built it for me." Meng Meng added very seriously. "Really?" Wang Yao laughed and said, "Then we should all thank Meng Meng for giving us this opportunity to have these dishes. Right?" Meng Meng laughed happily and looked very proud. "That mountain is very beautiful and large. Big Hai Hai is very tall and Little Hai Hai is very handsome. I also want to go there tomorrow," Wang Yihan said eagerly. "Then let's go there together tomorrow," Meng Meng muttered. Together, Wang Yihan happily decided to go there tomorrow, without knowing that Wang Jiun was smiling bitterly over there. How can we have time to have fun there? After talking for a while, they began to eat. After having the first bite, Wang Jiun was surprised. "The taste, why is it so delicious? Yeah, it's amazing." Wang Yan nodded and couldn't stop eating. "Aunt, I told you that my brother's ingredients would certainly attract you and you wouldn't put down your chopsticks after that," Zhang Li said with a smile. "It's really like this. This is the most delicious food I have ever eaten." Wang Jiaxin nodded heavily. Her appetite had always been average. She wasn't picky about food and always made herself only 60 or 70% full after a meal. But on this day, she became gluttonous and always wanted to eat more. She felt that she had become an energetic young girl again. That feeling was so wonderful. "Right," Wang Jiun smiled and said, Mr. Zhang's ingredients are indeed the best I have ever seen. His cooking isn't as exquisite as this, but I think it tastes more like the food at home. It's really amazing." Zhang Han smiled lightly after hearing that and said nothing. "The ingredients on Mount New Moon will be more and more high-end and delicious, even far better than those for royal banquets." "Hey?" Wang Ming suddenly found something was weird. It was the first time that he had eaten such a delicious meal in so many years. It was not because he hadn't seen much of the world. He'd tasted a lot of food throughout the country, so the only reason had to be that mountain. Suddenly, he thought of the sacred treasure that Zhang Han mentioned earlier, so he asked, "Is it related to the thing that you mentioned?" Zhang Han nodded and said directly, "I'll take you there to have a look tomorrow." "That's great." Wang Ming laughed and said, "I'm really lucky to have tasted such ingredients. It's equivalent to, well, having an LV bag or an Armani coat. It's luxurious." "Oh no, it's more precious than that." He had heard of sacred treasures and sacred weapons before, but no matter in which sect, those things were all used for cultivation and were enshrined and worshipped. However, Zhang Han even used that to make the best ingredients. "Oh, wait. Is it that the sacred treasure can only improve the ingredients?" Thinking of that, Wang Ming's mouth trembled and he got worried. No matter how good the ingredients are, it would be better if it could improve people's strength. He did not ask anything after thinking about it and devoted himself to the grand feast. He began to eat the noodles. Wang Ming didn't stand on ceremony and the sound of him eating noodles resounded through the whole second floor. However, others also had a better appetite because of him. Even if it was an ordinary meal, eating with someone who had a very good appetite would also improve one's appetite more or less, let alone eating the food made with ingredients from Mount New Moon. After the hearty dinner, everyone was very full. Wang Ming even couldn't help hiccuping a few times. He was just too full. He also paid more attention to the food, finding that those ingredients were easy to digest and all kinds of nutrition had begun to nourish his body. It was so strange that he could detect such changes so soon. Obviously, eating the food there all year round would prolong life and bring great benefits to the body. "I haven't had such a meal in many years." Rong Jiaxin shook her head with a smile. Just then, Zhao Feng walked up, followed by Sun Donging. "Boss, boss." Sun Donging looked around quickly and ran over to Zhang Han. Then, he whispered, "A lot of big bosses have been asking me to sell my membership card to them. The highest price is even 50 million. I'm tempted, but I didn't sell it." Yes. He was tempted, but he didn't sell it. There were several reasons. First, the membership card's value was constantly increasing. Second, he was reluctant to sell it because his family would still often go there to eat in the future. The most important reason was that Zhang Han was the savior of his whole family, so he didn't want to use the boss's membership card to make money. Although it was a lot of money, Sun Donging's income was also getting higher and higher. The fans of his stream had exceeded 1 million. If he hyped it up again, he'd probably earn 10 million annually very soon. He thought that he didn't need too much money. He wasn't a particularly greedy person. "Oh, if you want to sell it, just do it." Zhang Han shook his head indifferently. He wouldn't interfere with the dealings of membership cards. After hearing that price, Wang Ya was surprised, thinking that it was so easy for her cousin to make money. "I won't sell it. I just came here to tell you about this. A lot of powerful people with great status have come here recently. I'll go downstairs. My girl is still waiting for me." Sun Donging grinned and then ran away quickly. "Boss, the Kiao clan gave the membership card back yesterday, and also sent 100 million as an apology for the incident some time ago." Zhao Feng nodded while saying, "When the Kiao clan heard that, He Qingshan was killed in an instant, they were scared out of their wits. They hadn't expected that their family would have offended a Wudao Grandmaster. Therefore, they did what was mentioned earlier. Apology." Zhang Han smiled and said bluntly, "Send it back. I don't accept it." He hadn't done anything to the Kiao clan, not because he'd forgotten that matter, but because he didn't have the time. At present, even if he didn't make a move, a sentence would make a second-tier family such as the Kiaos suffer heavy losses and even collapse. If the Kiao clan knew about that, they would be scared to death. Forget it. Just then, Xian, who was sitting next to Zhang Han, held his arm and said, "We're doing very well now. I don't want to deal with all that mess anymore." Zhao Feng glanced at Zhang Han and then glanced at Xian. He didn't know what to do. "Then forget it." Zhang Han nodded lightly to Xian. Then, he looked at Zhao Feng and waved his hand, saying, "Send the bank card back and ask them for 10 times the number, then I'll let them go." 1 billion. Zhao Feng swallowed his saliva and nodded before walking back. But after 2 steps, he stopped and turned back, saying, "I forgot to tell you something. More than 20 people want the extra membership card." They discussed it and then asked if this membership can be auctioned. Many people knew that there was one last membership card. Rich people were worried that those with great power would use their connections, while those powerful men were worried that rich people would crazily drive up the price. Therefore, some rich people proposed to auction it so that they could spend their money fair and square. However, was the membership card really worth it? After learning about Mr. Zhang's restaurant, they made a detailed and thorough investigation. Then, they heard about something. Lin X, a VIP member from the Lin family, dealt with a batch of antiques through her connections and earned hundreds of millions. They heard that the VIP member, Sun Ming, had cancer before, but he was cured later. They also heard that Zhao Feng wasn't Mr. Zhang's disciple in the beginning. He stayed in the restaurant for a while and was shot in front of the door, but ended up being fine. He was also promoted to be a martial artist. He also bought the membership card first, which showed that, right, hanging around in front of Mr. Zhang may also bring me a great opportunity someday.